Regional Vice President.
Good evening. I'm thrilled to see all of you here. It's democracy in action. I apologize for the lack of chairs. I don't know if there's anything we can do about that. There's one up here in front. If there's one next to you that's open, would you raise your hand so that people can fill in? Thank you. All right, this is the November 19th Lincoln City Planning Commission meeting. It is now in order. Please stand and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. James, could we have a roll call, please?
Lenny Nelson.
Here.
Patty Crowan.
Here.
Mary McFarland.
Here.
Joshua Brainerd.
Here.
Marcy Baker. Steve Griffiths.
Here.
Miles Schlesinger.
Here.
Okay. Anne Marie, any agenda changes or revisions tonight?
Yes, thank you, Chair.
Is your mic on?
We are going to remove the work session item under new business from tonight's agenda. Oh, we are going to remove the work session item under new business from tonight's agenda. I believe we will have a full agenda without that.
You think?
We will take it up at another time.
Okay. Nothing else?
No, that's it.
Okay. We have the minutes from our regular meeting of October 15th. I assume that my fellow commissioners have had an opportunity to review those. Do I have a motion?
I move that we accept the minutes of the October 15th meeting.
Second.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, minutes are done. I don't believe we have any final orders, resolutions, or written communications tonight.
No, we don't.
All right, but we do have a public hearing. It is now 6:03. The public hearing for file CUP 2019-03 is now open. The public hearing concerns a request for a conditional use permit to operate an emergency shelter at 4488 Northeast Devils Lake Boulevard from December 1st through February 28th on an annual basis. The project site is Assessor's Map 07-11-02-AB, Tax Lot 102, and it is in the general commercial or the GC zone. The applicant is Chance, excuse me, Jeff Blackford, the executive director. The property owners are James Ruggieri, Carol Ruggieri, Dennis Regan, and Victoria Regan. The commission must take a few moments to cover some preliminary matters and required statements. Does any member of the commission wish to declare an ex parte contact, conflict of interest, or bias in this matter? Okay, I am going to declare that as a member of the Roads End Improvement Association Board, this topic was discussed at our last board meeting in a very general sense with the identification of this meeting coming up.
So the substance of the contact or communication was basically that there would be this meeting here?
That's correct.
Anything else?
Nope.
Okay. And you're not prejudiced by that contact, and you'll make the decision based upon the facts and evidence submitted at this hearing?
Correct.
And I guess anyone want to rebut that?
Anyone want to rebut that? Okay. Does any member of the audience wish to challenge the qualifications of a commissioner to participate in this matter? Seeing none.
Speaking of traffic patterns,
Yes, sir.
October 1st through October
Uh,
20th.
This is the jurisdiction of this body to hear this appeal.
It was open and the traffic was horrendous there.
Okay.
It needs to be further looked at.
Okay, sir, this is, the question, right, we'll get to your comment, you'll have an opportunity to give your comment. This is just to see if anybody has a problem with anybody sitting up here deciding this matter. Okay. Okay. Okay, the following statements are required to be made at the commencement of a hearing to the city code and ORS 197.7635. The staff will now read a list of the applicable substantive criteria for this decision.
The applicable substantive criteria for this decision are contained in 2 chapters of Title 17, LCMC 17.32, General Commercial Zone, and LCMC Chapter 17.60, Conditional Uses. Specifically in conditional uses, there are 5 criteria. The proposal is in compliance with the comprehensive plan. The site for the proposed use is adequate in size and shape to accommodate the use and all yards, spaces, wall, and fences, parking, loading, landscaping, and other features required by this title. The site for the proposed use relates to streets and highways adequate in width and degree of improvement to handle the quantity and kind of vehicular traffic that would be generated by the proposed use. The proposed use will have minimal adverse impact upon adjoining properties and the improvements thereon. In making this determination, the Commission shall consider, but not be limited to, the proposed location of the improvements on the site, vehicular egress, ingress, and internal circulation, pedestrian access, setbacks, height and bulk of buildings, walls and fences, landscaping, screening, exterior lighting, and signing. And the 5th criteria does not apply. I will read it anyway. It's in areas designated as requiring preservation of historic, scenic, or cultural attributes. Proposed structures will be of a design complementary to the surrounding area.
Okay. All the testimony, arguments, and evidence that is presented tonight must be directed toward the applicable substantive criteria previously listed. You may not remember all of it that she just mentioned, but pay attention when Anne Marie gives her staff report, because she will go over each one of those. And your testimony or comments need to be directed toward one of those substantive criterias that are listed, or any other criteria in the plan or land use regulations which you believe apply to the decision. So I'm going to probably ask you when you start your statement to identify which criteria your comments are addressing. Failure to raise an issue accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to afford the decision maker and the parties an opportunity to respond to the issue precludes appeal to the Land Use Board of Appeals, or LUBA, on that issue. Failure of the applicant to raise constitutional or other issues related to proposed conditions of approval with sufficient specificity to allow the decision maker to respond to the issue precludes any action for damages in circuit court. Prior to the end of this hearing, any person who participated may request a continuance to provide additional testimony, argument, or evidence, or request that the record be left open to submit additional written testimony, argument, or evidence. Before the staff presents a report, I'm going to summarize the public hearing procedures that have been adopted by the Planning Commission and the City Council. The adopted rules and procedures are on the table by the entrance to the council chamber, which you went by. Generally, the order of proceedings will be as follows. These preliminary matters and required statements will be completed soon, I promise. You will hear the staff report. We'll be allowed to ask questions of the staff. Then we'll hear the applicant's presentation. And then those in favor of the application will speak, and then those opposed will speak, and then those neutral will speak. And then testimony from public agencies, rebuttal by the applicant, requests of continuance or to leave the record open, close of the hearing, close of the record, request to submit written arguments, deliberations, and decisions. The city has established some time limits. The applicant will have 15 minutes and may reserve up to 5 minutes of that time for rebuttal. After the applicant testifies, any person can speak for up to 3 minutes. If the Planning Commission has questions, and this is questions of the applicant or questions of anyone else speaking, your time responding to those questions don't count as part of your time that you speak. If you wish to speak, please write your name and a mailing address clearly on the sign-in sheet at the entrance. And then when you come up, I'll ask you to speak directly into the microphone and begin by stating your name. If you have written testimony that you want to submit, you can give that to James, and that'll become part of the record. Okay, staff, please present your report.
For the record, my name is Anne Marie Skinner, Planning Director of the Planning and Community Development Department. This case file is CUP 2019-03 for the Chance Emergency Shelter. The applicant is Jeff Blackford. He is the Executive Director for Chance. The property owners, as has already been stated, but will be stated again, are James and Carol Gary and Dennis and Victoria Regan. The address of the site is 4488 Northeast Devils Lake Boulevard. And if you look at the screen, you can see an aerial photo. The site is outlined in this purple area. And it is located on the east side of Northeast Devils Lake Boulevard, approximately 174 feet north of Highway 101. The applicant proposes to use the site for an emergency shelter. The site consists of approximately 16,448 square feet. It is a developed parcel. It contains an existing parking lot, mature landscaping, a driveway approach, and an existing building that has previously been used as an office building and is currently being used as an office building. The building is approximately 6,600 square feet. The applicant proposes to use approximately 946 square feet of that area for the emergency shelter. The proposal is for the emergency shelter to operate on an annual basis from December 1st through February 28th, and only when weather conditions warrant. The subject site is located in the general commercial zone, and if you refer to the screen, the general commercial zone is in red. I have outlined the subject site in black. Surrounding the site and immediately adjacent to the north, that area is zoned RM, which is multiple family residential, and it contains an existing apartment complex building, Windward Apartments. The areas immediately adjacent to the east and the south are also zoned general commercial, and they contain office buildings. Immediately to the west of the site is Devils Lake Boulevard, and west of that is zoning of R1 7.5 and residential development. The Lincoln City Municipal Code, referred to as LCMC, Section 17.60.020 gives the Planning Commission the authority to approve this request, approve with conditions, disapprove, or revoke conditional use permits subject to the provisions of Chapter 17.60. I stated the applicable substantive criteria earlier, and I will review that again momentarily. Background information pertaining to this request. The former Lincoln City Resource Center and Emergency Warming Shelter merged with Chance Recovery and relocated from Taft to the subject site. The organization currently utilizes the subject site as the Lincoln City Chance offices. Use of the site as it is right now in its daily use with the offices and daily programs that are offered is a permitted use in the GC zone. No permits were necessary for Chance to use the building, and none are necessary for Chance's continued use of the site as its offices and daily program base. Use of the portion of the building for the emergency shelter, however, does require conditional use permit approval. The request tonight is for an emergency shelter, not a homeless shelter, and not transitional housing, each of which are completely separate and distinct items. An emergency shelter operates when weather warrants and only through certain parts of the year, as opposed to, say, for instance, a homeless shelter, which would operate year-round 24/7. The emergency shelter will consist of 422 square feet of men's sleeping area, 216 square feet of women's sleeping area, and 308 square feet of family sleeping area. The remaining 5,654 square feet of the building will continue to function as it does now for the Chance offices and daily programs. The emergency shelter will open between December 1st and February 28th on an annual basis. The applicant indicates that the opening criteria are when the nighttime low temperature reaches below 40 degrees or wind gusts, sustained winds of 50 miles per hour or higher are experienced. The hours of operation of the emergency shelter are from 6 p.m. to 8 a.m. for a total of 14 hours, 7 days per week, again as weather dictates. The applicant notes that when the shelter is open, the shelter will provide a hot dinner, pillow, blanket, cot, hot breakfast, and dry scrubs if the individual is wet. The staffing for the shelter consists of volunteers. Approximately 8 to 12 volunteers will operate the emergency shelter for a full night when open. 2 of those volunteers are awake the entire night. The volunteers go through a training program, and I will let the applicant address more of that training program. The specific findings made by the Planning Commission in granting a conditional use permit must be factual and supported by substantial evidence. The burden of producing substantial evidence to support the requisite findings is on the applicant seeking the approval of this conditional use. As stated before, the subject site is in the GC zone. An emergency shelter is listed as a use which meets the intent of the zone on a conditional basis, and that is subject to the provisions of Chapter 17.60. In order to grant any conditional use, the Planning Commission must find, based upon evidence, both factual and supportive, provided by the applicant, that 1, the proposal is in compliance with the comprehensive plan. The City of Lincoln City's comprehensive plan provides a general commercial district for a wide range of commercial, retail, professional offices, and personal services at a compatible scale. The city adopted the zoning ordinance in compliance with the comprehensive plan. Within Title 17 is the GC zone. The general commercial zone accommodates a wide range of commercial uses, as well as convenience service retail uses, and also permitted as conditional uses and other limited service facilities as listed in Chapter 17.32. Emergency shelters are among the uses allowed in the GC zone as a conditional use. Once approved as a conditional use and operating in conformance with any conditions, the emergency shelter would comply with the comprehensive plan. The site for the proposed use is adequate in size and shape to accommodate the use, and all yards, spaces, walls, and fences, parking, loading, landscaping, and other features required by this title. In this particular instance, the general commercial zone does not have setbacks. The building is existing. No new building is proposed. No additions to the existing building are proposed. The area that is immediately adjacent to the north, which is in the multiple family residential zone, does have a setback based upon the height of the building. The existing building meets that setback. Emergency shelter does not have a parking or loading requirement. The parking requirement for the office building as it now exists was met at the time that it was constructed and went through plan review. Title 17 does not have any requirements for walls or fences. The site is developed with an on-site traffic circulation pattern that was reviewed and approved during the building permit process for the existing buildings. However, the Planning Commission may impose conditions found necessary to protect the best interests of the surrounding property or neighborhood or city as a whole. The site for the proposed use relates to streets and highways adequate in width and degree of improvement to handle the quantity and kind of vehicular traffic that would be generated by the proposed use. The proposed emergency shelter will likely not add a significant amount of vehicular traffic. Shelter guests typically do not have vehicles. The site has an existing 18-space parking lot to accommodate the parking of the 8 to 12 volunteers' vehicles during the night, while still leaving 6 spaces for the shelter guests who may have vehicles. The proposed use will have minimal adverse impact upon adjoining properties and the improvements thereon. In making this determination, the Commission shall consider, but not be limited to, the proposed location of the improvements on the site, vehicular egress/ingress and internal circulation, pedestrian access, setbacks, height and bulk of buildings, walls and fences, landscaping, screening, exterior lighting, and signing. The applicant has stated that they are not proposing any additional, they are not proposing any walls, they are not proposing any additional landscaping to what exists on the site. There is no exterior lighting proposed, there is no signing proposed. The vehicular egress, ingress, circulation traffic pattern exists and was previously approved. The site front sidewalk, so the applicant states pedestrian access is available. The applicant states security issues will be handled with video surveillance cameras installed inside and outside the building, further stating that a security guard will walk the perimeter of the building when the emergency shelter is open. Overnight, the volunteers will ensure safety inside the building, and the applicant indicates continuance of the strong partnership with law enforcement. A number of comments were received regarding impact upon the surrounding properties. The comments that were received via email were included in the packet for planning commissioners. The ones that were just received today, I handed to you a printed copy right before the hearing. There was an email, actually 2 emails received that were videos. And Mr. Apicello, if you would be so kind as to provide some feedback on how to handle the videos.
As the IT department has not reviewed, whenever we get something electronic, we don't just allow people to come up to the podium and plug it in. It has to be reviewed by IT in order to be determined to be safe. So we're not going to be playing any videos for you, nor not going to do some presentation by people. We had some we're not sure that it even concerns this hearing, because there was no real identification that it was for this. So in an abundance of caution, we're probably going to ask you to leave the record open for no less than 7 days so we can ascertain whether or not the evidence that was submitted is actually about this hearing. And if it is, then we'll determine that, make sure it's safe for you to look at, and then you can look at it. So that's how I recommend we deal with this. I don't think the IT department can review it now, and we're certainly not going to play it for you and take up all these people's time. So.
There's one final criterion, and that is number 5. In areas designated as requiring preservation of historic, scenic, or cultural attributes, proposed structures will be of a design complementary to the surrounding area. This particular area is not one of those designated areas, and further, there are no proposed structures. So that criterion is not applicable to this request. Should the commission choose to approve the request, staff included in the staff report a number of possible conditions for Planning Commission's consideration that you may revise, strike at your discretion. And I would like to add one to that. I spoke at length with the building official and the fire marshal regarding this use, and I was under the impression that a building permit would have to be submitted for a change of occupancy classification. According to the building official and the fire marshal, that is not the case. A building permit does not need to be submitted for the emergency shelter. Rather, there is a fire code, a building and fire code, TA 14-12, that the building official and the fire marshal will walk through the area that will be utilized as the emergency shelter and will make sure that it complies with the items listed in TA 14-12. I did not read or look up TA 14-12, but it refers to smoke detectors, exiting of maximum occupancy, aisles not being blocked, which would go back to exiting. So those items are addressed through a walkthrough by the building official and the fire marshal, and no permit is necessary. If, when they do the walkthrough, they determine that there need to be obviously structural changes or additional doors, etc., then additional doors, etc., those items, of course, would require a building permit. But the use itself does not require a change of occupancy based upon what the building official and fire marshal said.
Henry, is there
Yes.
in your staff report, you talk about a planned renovation of 946 square feet of the ground floor. Does that not require a building permit?
It depends on the extent of the renovation. If they're just doing painting, flooring, installing smoke detectors, moving entrance doors, interior entrance doors, not to the building, not ingress egress doors to the building. If there's nothing structural involved, no bearing load walls, then likely that would not require a building permit. But I will cede to the building official on that, and they will need to confirm with us prior to any renovations whether or not a building permit is required for those renovations.
And just for clarification, if a building permit is required, what's the timeline on that?
If a building permit is required, the timeline right now for building permit review is approximately 4 to 5 weeks. Once
So-
the building permit is issued, then of course they need to do the construction, call in the inspections, maybe a couple of weeks after that, depending upon how fast their contractor is.
So we have 11 days to December 1st.
Yes.
So if a building permit is required for any renovations interior to the building, then that
You're-
might,
You would be imposing a condition of approval that any requirements of, all the requirements of the technical advisory number 14-12, which is Oregon Fire Code Interpretation and Technical Advisory Memo, would have to be met prior to occupancy. So, yes, could there be delay in getting a building permit done and getting the work done, and will that take you past? That doesn't matter, because the conditions are going to be, you must comply with this technical advisory memo, and that means before you occupy, you have to comply, and that means the work has to be done. If you want, I have the memo here. I could do a little bit more summary of it if you want.
I would like that, please.
Okay, so the subject is temporary shelters, and this is a technical advisory memo from the Oregon Fire Code, which the city has adopted as a requirement for temporary sheltering. It does say local jurisdictions may have more stringent requirements than are provided in this memo in our building code. In fact, Chapter 15 may, in fact, have some additional requirements. Number one, the time limits. To meet the allowances of this advisory, building may be used as a temporary shelter for the maximum of 90 days within a 12-month period. The application is less than that. Maximum number of occupants allowed. The maximum number of allowable temporary shelter occupants shall be calculated using an occupancy load factor of one individual for every 35 square feet of room area. For example, a room with 980 square feet will be allowed to provide temporary shelter for up to 28 occupants. That, of course, is subject to that first restriction. The city code may, the building code may provide for additional limitations. Life safety requirements. The following life safety requirements apply to buildings being used as temporary shelter. Fire sprinklers. It is not necessary for a building to have fire sprinklers installed to allow it to be used as a temporary shelter. However, buildings with approved fire sprinklers installed may be granted more flexibility. When a building is not fully fire sprinkled, temporary shelter sleeping areas may only be located on the first ground floor or the second floor. Sleeping areas are not permitted in the basement areas. When a building has approved fire sprinklers installed throughout, temporary shelter sleeping areas may be located on any floor. Smoke alarms and detection. All temporary shelter sleeping areas shall be provided with approved smoke alarms or a complete approved smoke detection system. All other areas of the building used for temporary shelter occupation shall be equipped with smoke alarms or smoke detection systems as required by local fire code. Smoke alarms may be battery operated. Carbon monoxide alarms and detection. All temporary shelter sleeping areas shall be provided with approved carbon monoxide alarms and complete approved detection systems in buildings that have carbon monoxide sources such as heater, fireplace, furnace, appliance, cooking sources. Let's see, carbon monoxide alarms may be battery operated. Means of egress, exits. All floor levels with temporary shelter areas shall have a minimum of 2 means of egress, and this is obviously to the outside. Exits from each floor level. All means of egress, exit paths shall be maintained free of obstructions. Exits from sleeping areas shall be as follows. Sleeping areas located on the ground floor of a temporary shelter with an occupancy load of 49 or less shall have at least one exit and at least one window qualifying as an escape or rescue window. All other floor levels used as temporary shelter sleeping areas that have an occupant load of 10 or more shall have 2 exits. Exit signs, you have to have exit signs installed throughout. No smoking signs installed. Open flame devices, the use of open flame devices is prohibited. Portable fire extinguishers, temporary shelters shall be equipped with portable fire extinguishers. Emergency evacuation plan, all temporary shelters shall create and maintain an approved emergency evacuation plan addressing the evacuation of all occupants. And there's specific requirements about that. Fire watch during sleeping hours, a fire watch shall be maintained continuously. This means at least one responsible person shall be awake and assigned to this responsibility. The duty may be rotated. Documentation of all fire life safety requirements, including copies of temporary shelter evacuation plans, shall be maintained on site and shall be available for review by the local fire official. Notification, local fire code official shall be notified prior to temporary shelter being used. Notification shall be a number of occupants being temporary shelter, the expected days and times. Local fire official may require the inspection prior to shelter being occupied. Again, that's just a summary, not word for word, but these are required. We're not debating these. These are just conditions of approval. They're not going to operate unless they meet these standards and any other more restrictive requirements that are in our code.
Thank you.
That
Do you have more?
That concludes the staff report.
Okay. I know there are lots of questions up here. So who wants to start? Who has a question? Marie?
I do. Thank you, Anne Marie. I was noticing that based upon the drawing for the sleeping areas, that we have much less square footage than what this 946 square feet is. And based upon that, to me, I'm looking at the men's sleeping area of 12, maximum of 12 people, and women's of 6 people. Does that sound about right for a max number of people that would be occupying these rooms?
The application did not give a maximum number of occupants proposed. The maximum occupancy would be determined by the technical advisory.
Okay, so based upon what Richard was talking about with the 35 feet per individual, square feet per that,
Correct.
that's what I sat
Marie,
down and did the math.
that might be a better question for the applicant
Okay, yeah.
than for Anne Marie.
Had a set number.
I think for Anne Marie, it has more to do with the applicable criteria.
No problem, yeah.
So, other questions regarding the staff report and the criteria? No? Okay. I have just one, I think, that goes to you, and that has to do with criteria 3. Talks about vehicular traffic only, but it doesn't seem to address increase in foot traffic or safety of people walking and, being around. So, I'm sorry, could we please you'll get a chance to speak. Thank you.
You are correct, Chair. That criterion number 3, as it reads, specifically and only addresses vehicular traffic. It does not address pedestrian.
Okay, so comments could be to number 3 for foot traffic, and also, I suppose, to number 4 for minimal adverse impact to the
Yes.
surrounding area.
For foot traffic, I would refer those to criterion number 4 rather than number 3.
Okay. The other question that I had is really more of a background question. I know that the shelter, there was a warming shelter in Lincoln City to the southern part of town, and I can't recall if it operated last year, but I'm pretty sure it operated the year before. Do you have any information that you can share with us regarding the history of the operation of that facility?
I asked Chief Palmer to do some investigating as far as statistics on number of calls and police visits in that area and this area, and he is present tonight, prepared to address questions of the commissioners, and I would defer that question to him.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Any other questions for Anne Marie or staff? Okay. We are ready for the applicant's presentation. Who's our applicant?
Would you like Chief Palmer to, or would you like to wait?
I think this would be the appropriate time if you.
To have him come
Yeah,
up?
because
Okay, I was-
after the, people that may want to rebut what's said will
Okay.
have an opportunity.
Let's do, Chief Palmer? Good evening.
Hello.
I'm going to assume you heard my question, or should I restate it?
Well, the best I can do for you is only tell you about a generic research that we're able to do through our computer-aided dispatch system, and essentially kind of tracking our calls for service in the north end and the south end of town. And what I can tell you is that for south of D River, for 2017, 18, and 19, we had in 2017 a total of 124 calls for service that our CAD system showed a reference to the term transient in the call for service. The way our system is set up, we don't have, an identifier code to say that something is specifically, a call is specifically associated with the warming shelter or homeless services. So what we were able to do is just associate the term transient in our computer and come up with the total number of calls for a certain period of time. So in 2017, we had 124 calls for service south of D River. In 2018, that jumped to 218 calls for service. So for 2019, those calls have gone back down to 125 calls for service south of D River. North of D River in 2017, we had 187 calls for service with the term transient in the CAD. In 2018, that was 170. So from January 1st of 2019 to November 18th, we've experienced 200 calls for service.
How
200. So
In what, was that like
That's
an
from
8
Jan-
months,
from January 1st to November 18th, north of D River.
so 11 month?
Right. So in 2019, we had, June of 2019, we had 13 north of D River. In July, we had 23, but from August 1st to November 17th, there was 78.
Okay. North of D River's a lot of area,
Yes, it is.
so
and
you
again,
can't
this is-
really get
These are
into-
just calls with the term transient in the call.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't say, it doesn't cover everything from trespass to burglaries and that sort of stuff.
Sure.
It's just if the officer, for whatever reason, determined this person was, in their opinion, or it was learned that they are a transient homeless person that's not a resident of Lincoln City, that was involved in the CAD.
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
You bet.
Before you go, any questions for Chief Palmer?
Do you have any feeling for how many calls there have been for? Has there been a significant increase in the north part of town of calls for trespass, public indecency, et cetera?
There has been an uptick in calls for service of various natures, similar to what you're talking about, yes. So trespass, we've had some indecent exposure calls up there, but trespass, public urination, and defecation, but trespass is probably the biggest call for service that we're getting up on that end that we've seen an increase on. So.
Any others? Marie?
Chief Palmer, also with the number of calls that have increased, do you have the staff to bring people up there to deal with all of the problems and not affect the rest of the city?
Well, again, we always respond to our calls for service within the city based on the priority of the call, the severity of the call. Currently, our staff is able to keep up with what is going on. Yes. So.
And it will not impact you to be drawn up there to do the extra duties that they would like you to do based on this plan?
Wherever the increase in calls for service comes, that means that other things will have to be put on hold to be addressed, whether it's traffic enforcement or proactive enforcement. The more calls for service that we have directed to us, where we have to direct an officer to go do something, always impacts our ability to do proactive enforcement. So, but that's our job, is to respond to the calls and calls for service. So.
And I noticed that this is talking about nighttime. Do you have extra officers on for nighttime?
We don't put extra officers on for nighttime. We try to staff each of our shifts as equally as we can. And currently, we are at full authorized strength. So we generally will field, depending on sick leave and vacation, we are staffed for 4 officers and a supervisor for all of our shifts, with the exception of we still have a sergeant out on light duty. So.
Thank you. Okay.
Chair,
Yes, ma'am.
if City Manager Chandler is here, and if the commission has any questions on the historical background of the warming shelter in the Taft area, he is happy to address the commission.
Okay.
Um,
Good to know.
Commissioners, when asking questions of staff or others in this proceeding, please keep in mind the admonition of the chair that you should identify what applicable criterion you are talking about.
Yes. Thank you. Okay. Applicant.
Good evening. My name is Jeff Blackford. I'm the Executive Director of Chance. I appreciate the opportunity to present tonight and to introduce Chance to the community, and I apologize, we should have done this a long time ago. So I'll start with that. Chance is a organization that's been around for about 14 years. We offer recovery sports services for friends, family, and the people of Lynn, Benton, and Lincoln counties. Our mission statement is to assist individuals within our community who have mental health and/or substance abuse-related issues and who are seeking recovery to effectively implement positive change. Chance provides support, guidance, and the necessary resources to facilitate development of life skills. Chance integrates short-term goals with long-term goals so individuals have a better chance of becoming productive members of our community. Our goal is to demonstrate our commitment by applying spiritual values. Our vision statement is to offer peer-guided wellness services and supports for community members seeking personalized recoveries from life crises. We achieve this by compassion, advocacy, and understanding. We have 5 locations. Our main headquarters is in Albany. We have offices in Corvallis, Lebanon, Newport, and now Lincoln City. Who we are. Chance is a peer-led recovery support group. So what peer-led means is I am someone in recovery. I was a methamphetamine and cocaine addict for 9 years. I deeply damaged my family and my parents' lives by my addiction. And so I use my recovery system and my recovery story to help other people in recovery to better themselves and to help them find recovery and to help them get into supports, into treatment, and to help them better their lives. So we're a peer-led recovery support center that uses non-clinical peer-based activities that engages, educates, and supports an individual to successfully make the life changes necessary to recovery from mental health and/or substance abuse disorders. What we offer. Chance offers a variety of supports, including case management, employment supports, transportation, rental assistance, birth certificates and ID supports, financial budgeting, GED assistance, access to primary care, transportation to detox and/or treatment, smoking cessation, Food Box 101, peer support trainings, support groups like AA, NA, DDA, which is dual diagnosis, and many, many more. Some info about Chance. We have been around since 2005. We currently employ 22 people. We have over 1,400 members in the Tri-County region. Through our Chance Second Chance program, which is a grant that we, our employees, help to administer throughout the community. Through our Second Chance grant, we have provided direct support to 448 people since 2017. We have given out a total of $69,914. We have provided rental assistance for 123 people, totaling $49,000. Application fees to 202 people, ID support for 32 people and 21 birth certificates, and provided over 70 bus tickets and transportation vouchers. Some of our community partners are Intercommunity Health Network, also known as IHNCCO, Samaritan Health Services, Lincoln County Behavioral Health, Lincoln County Sheriff's Department, Benton County Drug Court, Lincoln County Mental Health, Lincoln County Alcohol and Drug, Samaritan Health Services Homeless Resource Team, Albany Police Department, City of Albany, just to name a few. I would like to bring Amelia up to share her story of why an emergency shelter is so important.
Hi, my name is Amelia Wickhuse. I actually am a resident of Lynn County. I live in Albany and have lived there my whole life. I also am an employee of Chance. So I'm a person in recovery from substances as well as mental illness and trauma. I used to be homeless. I used to live in camps and abandoned houses full of drug addicts, and I was no longer a person who could maintain relationships with my family. I couldn't maintain a relationship with my daughter, all of those things. And when I finally got the mental health help that I needed, I would have not been able to rejoin society if it weren't for a warming shelter. In my community, we have 23 recovery homes, and when I first stopped using drugs, I couldn't get into a recovery home for 30 days, and I didn't know anybody who was clean and sober. I didn't have relationships with my family, and I had nowhere to go. And the only place I could go was to our local warming shelter. If it had not been there in combination, during the day I would spend my days at Chance because it was a clean and sober, safe place where there were people who didn't judge me. They were examples of people right in front of me who had struggled just as hard as I was struggling with substances and mental illness, but they had gotten clean and sober. They had gotten their mental health in order. They had regained lives worth living, and they were people in front of me, an example of hope that didn't give up on me. And so at nighttime I would go to the warming shelter, and during the day I would go to Chance, and they would push me towards bigger and bigger goals in my life. I got into treatment. I got clean and sober after being at the warming shelter for 30 nights. I got into an Oxford clean and sober house. I completed outpatient treatment. I started out volunteering at Chance, and I've been clean and sober for 6.5 years, and I worked up from being a volunteer there to being a weekend staff there to being the resource and activities coordinator, and now I run a peer support specialist training program that's state certifiable, so folks with their own story of recovery can take a training to learn how to support other people appropriately and in a healthy way to help them find recovery. And I supervise 3/4 of our staff, all of our peer support folks across 3 counties. I'm a mother to 2 beautiful 12-year-old girls. I'm a wife. I'm a daughter my parents can be proud of. I contribute to my society and I give back. And I would not be that person had someone not had a warming shelter in my community. I get the opportunity to serve your community now, and I see the same hurt in the faces in your community that are struggling. And I just hope that we have the opportunity to offer the kind of recovery that I got to experience in my life. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Amelia.
So what is new for Chance in Lincoln City? June of this year, Chance and the Lincoln City Warming Center merged, and we opened Chance Lincoln City September 1st at 4488 West Devils Lake Boulevard. The merger is giving Chance the opportunity to offer mental health and addiction services along with homeless support at our new location. Chance has applied for the conditional use permit for a 90-day shelter program from December 1st to February 28th. The shelter is a vital component in the continuum of care for those individuals who are homeless. Chance Lincoln City will create a hub, a one-stop shop of social services. We are working with community partners to offer office space to create a hub of social service providers. We will be offering space for AA, NA, Wellbriety, and other recovery support groups. Chance Emergency Shelter, if granted the conditional use permit, will operate the emergency shelter per permit December 1st through February 28th. In addition to the volunteers, we have decided we will have 2 paid staff, 2 paid peer support staff, and 2 paid security staff. We will work with law enforcement to maintain a safe environment. We will provide a safe, warm space for people off the streets. We will provide peer-delivered services for people seeking recovery supports from mental illness and addiction. And we will provide referrals to clients to other community partners for continuing their supports. The Chance Shelter Program for 2020, we have applied for a grant starting in 2020 that will allow us to do a feasibility study to look at a more permanent shelter program. We want to start looking at a permanent shelter by 2020 in a more suitable location other than our 4488 location. It is not a suitable location for a permanent shelter. We have already started to look for a more suitable location. The shelter will serve all of Lincoln County. The shelter that we would like to open under the feasibility study will have a men's dorm, a women's dorm, and a family dorm. Will offer shower and laundry facilities. And the shelter program will offer addiction and mental health services built into the shelter program. I would like to bring Amanda Cherry Holmes up to the stand. Amanda Cherry Holmes is our manager here in Lincoln City. She was the former program director of the Lincoln City Warming Shelter and Resource Center. She came to our staff when the 2 organizations merged, and she will present some data of some of the local statistics.
To address the earlier concern, we did operate the shelter in Taft of last year, and included with that, the city put an emergency declaration to give us the ability to do so. And with that came a mitigation plan. Part of that mitigation plan was for us to receive a daily fax of the police log so that we could look at everything going on in Lincoln City at all times and be able to cross-reference with people that are utilizing our services. If someone was found to be malicious behavior or antisocial behavior, we would then deny services to them in our shelter. So I just wanted to let you guys know about that partnership that was formed last year and has continued over the course of the time that we've existed. As you can see on this first slide, I have it broken down by 3 quarters. We don't really have a 4th quarter quite yet because we still have another month for that. There's a steady decline in the percentage of crime that has happened at or around the Lincoln City Resource and Emergency Shelter due to our in-house rules, mitigation plan, and very strong working relationship with the Lincoln City Police Department. In quarter 1, we had 1% of the crime in all of Lincoln City. Quarter 2 was 0.4%, and quarter 3 was 0.2%, which is about a 50% decline every single quarter. Between December 16th, 2018 and November 17th of 2019, less than 1% of crime happened at or around the Lincoln City Resource Center and Emergency Warming Shelter Program. So basically what that means is incidences that actually happened at our center or the surrounding neighborhood. Less than 1% in all of the incidences that have happened in basically the last year. On the next slide, there's a breakdown of the people that have utilized our services. we have served 1,031 unduplicated people. And the number of people that have been in a crime, involved in some sort of a crime, was 45, which is 4%. This means that 96% of the people who walk in our door are not involved in a crime of any kind. And this doesn't just go for our center, it goes for the entirety of Lincoln City. So there's different reasons that could contribute for why these people are involved in a crime. There's a pie graph, and 40% of that is addiction, 27% of that is co-occurring, 7% of that is mental illness, and another 7%, there's really no excuse. But what's striking about this is that 19% of the people that have been involved in a crime were a victim of that crime, and that's a large percentage. 74% of the people who have utilized Lincoln City Resource Center or emergency warming shelter services and involved in a crime of some form struggle with mental illness, addiction, or both. And with this merge with chance, that can be addressed. On the next slide, we have a breakdown of every single quarter since we have started of the crime and the percentage of crime in the north versus the south. In quarter one, which was December 16, 2018 through March 16th of 2019, 63% of the crime was on the north side of town, which is D River and north. 36% of the crime was D River south, and 1% of the crime was at or around our center. Quarter 2 and 3, it's a little bit more of an even keel, and reasons behind that is that we have a large number of tourists that come into town, and so that is spring break and summer vacation and that sort of thing. Quarter 4, we have September 17th of 2019 through November 17th of 2019, so this is not entirely fair because we still basically have another month to go. The north is responsible for 63% and the south is responsible for 36%. And as you can see, quarter 1 and quarter 4 have the exact same percentages. And with quarter 1, our location was at the south end of town, and quarter 4, our location is on the north end of town, which basically means that our services have nothing to do with the crime rate.
Okay, I'm going to ask you to wrap up here.
Okay.
Oh, well, looks like you're there.
Well, we appreciate the opportunity. The shelter is, the emergency shelter is extremely in need and is needed in the community. And we would like to invite the entire community to an open house December 20th so you can get to know us and we can invite the community so they can take a look at what we do and
Happy holidays.
just get to know us.
Thank you. I know that a lot of us have some questions for you, specifically toward your proposal and how they relate to the criteria that we are required to review for this. So, Steve, do you want to start? You have a question? Can you pick
Yeah,
one?
I'm not sure. I haven't prepared to show how they would relate to the criteria we need to discuss. It was mentioned that you would have 946 square feet of your facility approximately for shelter, emergency shelter.
Right.
How would that translate, and how many people could you serve overnight?
So when we calculated that out, we were calculating it out based on the 28 being able to be served.
There's 3 different sections. There's the men's sleeping area, the women's sleeping area, and what was not mentioned is the family sleeping area, which is the front lobby, and that's where the extra square footage comes from.
And that's 28 total?
Correct.
Of those 3 groupings that you could serve?
Yes,
So you couldn't go over that then? Right?
that is correct.
Okay. And in terms of your history with the warming shelter in Taft, what was the maximum number of people you served there?
Well, it depended on the location. At the Congregational Church, we didn't really have a limit per se, and so the most that we ever saw was 40. But at the Taft location, our location was much smaller, so the most that we ever saw was 25.
All right, thank you. You mentioned renovating the ground floor to create these different quarters for your clients. Has that been done yet or not?
There's no renovation that is needed. It is already, the floor plan is already in place. It's already been done.
All right, so if we approve your request tonight, you would be able to open on December 1st, is that correct?
That is correct.
Assuming the fire standards are met.
Yes.
And then, can you tell us how often you've turned individuals away from your doors when you operated in Taft, and for what reasons?
On very rare occasions. If somebody becomes belligerent or basically at a level of need that we do not have the training or capability to take care of, then we unfortunately have to deny them services. We also have a 10 o'clock cutoff time, which means that people do not have in and out access. And so if somebody shows up at 2:30 in the morning and they're super drunk, we're not going to let them in. However, if they have a police escort or an EMS worker escort, we will allow them in.
All right.
So where will they go? If they show up at, as your hypothetical, they show up at 2 o'clock in the morning, drunk, belligerent, without a police escort, you don't let them in, so then where do they go?
Hypothetically, we have a phone that we allow them to call a police escort to come and make sure that they are okay to come in. As in, we've never had a situation where someone came to the door where we didn't try to come up with a compromise of some kind so that they could come in.
Okay.
And you mentioned hiring 2 security staff. What
That
would
is
their
correct.
hours be?
It would be during the operational hours of 6 p.m. to 8 a.m.
Okay. And you serve dinner there?
Yes.
And
We
that-
would during the shelter operations.
Meals are prepared on site,
They would be, yes.
and all of your clients can have dinner and breakfast there, is that correct?
That is correct.
Any overflow plans? For example, if you can only house 28, are you working with perhaps some churches to take any overflow that might be needed on?
So we do have an overflow plan. If it is through Sunday through Thursday, we would be reaching out to the Newport shelter and providing transportation up there. If it is case by case, if it is someone who is if it is a family person with a disability or elderly, we do have a hotel motel voucher program that we would be getting them into a hotel or a motel as a priority.
And then, can I ask where you get your financial support for your operation?
So we have multiple contracts that provide our financial support. We have contracts with the counties. We have contracts with all 3 counties, Lynn County, Benton County, and Lincoln County. And then we have contracts with IHNCCO to provide peer-delivered services.
Thank you.
I'm going to sneak one in here. And this has to do with the adequate size and shape to accommodate the use, and then also to the minimal adverse impact in the neighborhood. In your mitigation plan, you acknowledged that in the evenings, you don't, there is basically after 5 or 6 o'clock, there is no bathroom facilities available. And in your mitigation plan, you identify other private businesses that you would send these folks to. I think in your first mitigation plan, it was the casino, and then in the adjusted mitigation plan, it was a gas station and a laundromat. I'm curious about the justification of sending people to a business that provides restroom facilities for their customers and asking them to take on this rather than build a 24-hour accessible restroom on your premises.
So we have since removed the restroom portion in the mitigation plan. If we are granted the conditional use permit, we have restrooms on site that they would be allowed to utilize.
That would be available 24/7 for anyone coming.
During our operational hours, yes.
Okay, during operational hours of the facility or operation of the warming
The
shelter?
warming shelter.
So essentially 24-hour access to the restroom facilities you have.
Or during the warming shelter operations, yes.
Okay. During the time you're operating the warming shelter. One other question. I see lots of folks wandering around with dogs. What happens with their dogs if they come to your site and
We
want to
do-
operate, want to use the warming shelter?
We do have 2 kennels. We do have a supply of dog food as well as some doggy doo-doo bags.
And is that internal to the building?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Other questions?
Oh, yes.
Renee?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess I don't quite understand how this program works. If you trust the weather person, at best you can predict 10 days out what's going to happen. Realistically, you can predict about 3 days out here. So at the drop of a hat, you're prepared to come up with 2 security people, somewhere between 8 and 12 volunteers, someone to cook or somebody else to do it. And all of this at the drop of a hat when it suddenly is going to be 38 degrees tonight?
So we actually received funding to have paid staff available for a 3-month period to take care of the operational side. And then Amanda has been doing the shelter piece for several years, and they have a system down to have the volunteer access pretty well at hand, and so I have every confidence that they'll be able to manage the volunteer piece.
We have
Where are you going to get the security people on an off moment?
They're going to be employed by chance.
Yeah, but most of the time it isn't below 40 here. I've lived here a long time. So those people are not employed by you when it's not cold. Is that what I hear you saying?
So they're going to be employed by chance, and they're going to be on call, and they're going to be on call for, they're going to get paid whether or not they're working or not. We're going to give them a pretty good contract.
Oh, okay.
And historically, we have utilized NOAA in terms of our weather, NOAA. And so we go on the website, we check it out. It gives us about 5 days advance notice to know whether or not we need to open the shelter.
Yeah, around here that can be changeable. Okay, the other thing then is, where is all of this staff and all of these volunteers going to stay while you have all these other people in here? I didn't understand where there's room for them.
We have other offices located on the lower floor as well.
So that's where you're going to put all these volunteers?
Well, we have a front desk that some of our volunteers will be able to be at. And then we have 3 additional offices that are located on the main floor that will be able to have desks. And plus our staff will be roaming the area.
At night?
Yes.
Okay. Part of the criteria says that there shall be counseling services. Are you intending to provide counseling services to the people who come to the warming shelter?
Yes, that is part of what peer-delivered services is. We want to be able to provide peer-delivered services to people coming in, especially if someone is suffering from a mental health crisis or someone suffering from addiction. We want to be able to provide peer support services to people. So hopefully we can get them into treatment or into a detox facility and provide the support necessary for them to do something positive with their life or to meet them where they're at.
But on an unknown chance that it might be cold enough tonight to open the warming shelter, you have peers who will come and counsel these people?
Yes. So we're making the commitment that we're going to have 2 staff and 2 peer support on duty.
Even if the warming shelter isn't open?
Yes, ma'am.
And what are they going, well, that's your business what they do with it, well, otherwise, I guess. Okay. Okay. And then there are 2 hours in the, well, one of the concerns that I have, and perhaps you've dealt with it already, is the fact that there is no easy way to get up to the center, this place that you've selected. There are no sidewalks. the last bus stops at 5:24 that is near a drop-off there. And you don't open the shelter till 6, and then you close it at 6 a.m., and I didn't catch when they start in the morning, but so how are you expecting people to safely come and go from your shelter, and what are they going to do with that 2 hours a day when you don't have it open?
So there's a lot of foot traffic that there's a lot of residential that is behind the shelter location. So there's a lot of people that walk to the grocery store that have nothing to do with our shelter. And they just stay on the side of the road, and every time I go to work, I see people walking all the time. We also have a foyer that is attached to the building that has 2 double doors, and they stay locked, and we keep that other door open in case, like especially when it's really bad outside, then they have somewhere to actually be out of the rain and out of the wind. So in the case that, say they're at the resource center, and we close the resource center at 5, the warming shelter opens at 6. For that hour period of time, we would allow people to be in that foyer so they wouldn't have to go anywhere or worry about where they're going to be.
Okay, that's all the questions I have at the moment.
Other questions, Marie? And, you know, to model good behavior, please identify the criteria that your question's attached to.
Do that.
Thank you.
This has to do with impact on the neighborhood, or to the neighborhood. Looking at your mitigation plan and looking at the information you provided, there's several things I didn't see. One of them has to do with screening for sex offenders, since you are looking at making it an opportunity for families. Are you doing that, or do you have any kind of an intake program that does this?
We do not currently allow sex offenders in the center.
How do you
for the
identify
shelter.
them?
We do have a screening process. We do have an intake, and we also work with other agencies to identify. But most of the time, people that are sex offenders will self-identify. Do you want to talk about the process that you used last year?
So there's a couple of different options for us to call in regards to finding out whether or not someone's a sex offender and finding out at what degree of sex offender that they are, whether or not they're predatory or not. We can call the local police non-emergency number and give them a name, and they can look that up for us and let us know. We can also call parole and probation during business hours and ask them the same question.
Another area that is not identified is whether or not you are looking at firearms. Are you searching for firearms? Are people coming in with either firearms, knives, clubs, things that would be hazardous either to people in your group or in the neighborhood?
Weapons are absolutely not allowed, and we do bag checks for every single person that walks in the door. We also ask people to empty their pockets, because we legally can't, search someone's pocket, but we can ask them to empty their pocket. We also have gone as far as asking people to take off their shoes to make sure that there's no hidden knives or anything like that. We did last year have a couple of police officers come in and show us the correct way to do bag searches, and we do implement that for the warming shelter.
And who is training your volunteers?
For the bag checks?
Right. In your plan, you say that you've got your volunteers are being trained, and that they would be doing searches. How are they trained to search so they themselves are safe?
The police department. The Lincoln City Police Department came in. Last year, the Lincoln City Police Department came in and did the training themselves to our volunteers. We can also do that this year.
So is this additional work that our police force would be doing is in a training capacity of training your people to do this, or are they going to be asked to come in and do searches?
They would not be asked to come in and do searches. We made a partnership with them last year and asked them if they would be willing to come in and just show us the correct way to do bag checks. And so there was a number of us that were there to watch and see what we needed to do, and then those of us that were there were able to train other volunteers on how to correctly do bag searches.
Okay. Let someone else know. I've got some other. Go ahead.
Other questions, Steve? Josh? Any questions?
Been pretty comprehensive so far.
Okay. I know on one of your slides it mentioned that you're also involved with a smoking cessation program. Will the folks that come to your shelter be allowed to smoke there?
No. we do not want to make it comfortable for smoking. One of our metrics for our funding is smoking cessation, and we are dependent on that funding to make sure that we stay operational. And so we want to provide all the necessary supports to help people quit smoking and to find resources to be able to find smoking cessation aids. And so we want to give every opportunity to help someone quit smoking. And all of our campuses at all 5 sites are tobacco-free.
So when folks come to your facility and they want to come into the warming shelter and they want to have a cigarette before they come in, where are they going to do that?
They have to be off campus to smoke.
So the neighborhood.
They have to be off campus to smoke.
And in addition to that, there's also the entire lot, which is not just our building, but the other existing buildings on the lot. The owners have put a no smoking policy on the entire property. So it's not just our policy, it's the policy of the property owners.
One of the things that I did send an email to one of the concerned neighbors that if needed, I would be willing to go to the property owners and ask if we could be granted a designated smoking area. That would be, I really don't want to do that, but I'd be willing to do that. I really would like to find a solution of being able to provide this smoking cessation versus then providing a smoking station.
Sure, and I understand that. That's a laudable desire. However, the reality is that
Absolutely.
it's a little different than that. Okay. Any other questions for the applicant? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, you have my list.
Could, Commissioners, this isn't Dancing with the Stars, so I'd ask the members of the audience to please hold your applause.
It's so rare that we get applause at our meetings that I was sort of taken aback by it. Yeah, please hold your applause. Cheers and jeers. And, you know, I just want to, we're ready to take testimony from the public. We're going to start with testimony in support of the application. And I just want to make a little statement that I want you all to keep in mind. I'm going to assume, for the sake of argument, that we're all adults in here and that we can all be respectful of each other. You know, you can come to the podium and say whatever you like. You have that right. But what this commission is looking for is testimony and evidence that relates to the applicable criteria. That's what we're bound by. That's what we make our decisions by for a conditional use permit. So if you come to the podium and you ask us to consider in making our decision irrelevant evidence or worse yet, prejudicial or discriminatory evidence, particularly discrimination based on race or disability or any of those other factors, we will expressly reject such inappropriate and, in fact, illegal considerations. It's not legal for us to consider those types of things. So I would ask you to just preface your remarks with what applicable criteria your comments are related to. And I have the hearing sheet for statements in favor. And I'm going to apologize in advance if I mangle anybody's names. I'm already confused by the first one. I think it's Melton, someone on mast. Is there a, would that be you? Tell me what it says. There you go, that's it. That's what I meant to say.
I didn't see the sign-up sheet, so I don't know how I got to the front, but that's okay.
You're number one.
All right, so my name's Tim Melton. 4 years I've been on the Warming Shelter Board. This is not the first song and dance we've done. Heard a lot of these same questions over and over again. We have answered them every time. It's kind of frustrating to have to go through this again, wondering what we're going to do with our least fortunates. Chance, I'm also on the board of director of them now, so I was able to jump over to the new organization. Pros for the organization, I'm not sure how this hits your criteria, but it's certainly important background. We had a very hard time as the warming shelter finding funding, finding support, finding all these components of running a very successful shelter. And we pulled it off with Amanda, Sharon, and a very strong board. And I can say with all respect to the old board that the new board and the new organization is far more substantially funded, more rounded, more diverse, in virtually every aspect, in a better position to help the homeless than the original warming shelter was. We started out in a church. We outgrew it. And we have looked at contingency to look at other churches, and no one wants to play. There is such a stigma and all this stuff that we have to go through each and every time that people get burnt out. Some of my best friends in this city have simply stepped away from the homeless cause because of being beaten up over and over and over again with the NIMBY, with the enablers, with all the stuff associated with this. The building that Chance has right now is absolutely a home run for location for obvious reasons. Social services, mental health, addiction services, all the things that we could hope for in a location are served at the place that we landed. Yet, people still find problem with that. I'm a business owner. I run businesses in Taft. I have for 8-9 years now. I have seen zero increase in homeless when the shelter opened and when the shelter closed. As a matter of fact, I would say I probably see more homeless in Taft now than I did when the shelter was operating. I have a bird's eye view. I look out my door. So I wasn't really ready to go on the criteria thing, but what I want to say is we have an opportunity to have an organization that is well-funded, that has a very broad base, looking to help people in many, many, many ways, one-stop shopping to help the homeless person, and we quibble over whether the sidewalks are going to be too busy because of 30 people walking on them. Or how are they safely going to get there? The bus stops there practically. So want to kind of keep it short, but and there you go.
There you
Any
go.
questions, I would more than happy to answer.
Thank you. You have a question?
I'd like to know
Use your
why,
mic, please.
I'd like to know why you can't get a permission for smoking and fence the property off from the neighbors in back of you that live in the apartments so that you could have privacy for your residents and they could smoke outside, which is fine with most of them, and they don't have to litter the public areas.
Well, that's a question that sounds like is way more suited for Jeff, and I think he kind of addressed that. We get funding for helping people stop smoking. It's kind of contradictory to give someone a place a smoke when we get funded to help people not smoke. So with that said, I would say that's a question for Jeff, certainly more. But I was listening to what people were saying about, oh, people have to go smoke. Oh, my God, they got to go outside. People smoke whether they're at the warming shelter, whether at the grocery store, whether at the casino. Trying to associate the Chance program with someone needing to smoke is ridiculous. It has nothing to do with it, okay?
Thank you, Tim.
You know, thank you very much.
Yes. Shayna Matic? Could be Sharia. Okay, well, there's a Christopher also, so is there somebody associated with a Christopher that's named Shayna? No? Okay. Clayton Varno. Hi. Speak into the mic, thanks.
My name's Clayton Varno. I just want to say that I use the warming shelter right now, and
Do you want to restart the, thank you.
Sorry, I pushed the wrong button.
Go ahead. I know, fastest 3 minutes.
anyway, I use the warming shelter right now. I just came here a couple weeks ago. They helped me, I get cleaned up, of course. I found a job. It's a part-time job, but at least I found one, and they help me. So obviously when it gets cold outside, it'd be nice to have a warm place to sleep and be able to go to work the next day cleaned up. So I'm not really talking about the technical aspects or the criteria. I'm just asking people to open their hearts and let us have a warming shelter for the winter. Thank you.
Thank you. Kathy Garrett. Oh. Someone signed you up.
It said support, it doesn't say that's the confusion.
Oh, well, no.
It says who supports it, who doesn't support it, doesn't say what you're talking.
Well, up at the top, it does talk about speaking to the commission, so. Whoa. Look at you.
I mean, to tell you. I'm not going to get that close because I'm afraid.
Okay. You might want to pull the microphone
Oh, I
toward.
was going to sit in that, babe. Thank you, honey. This is really nice, but I'm going to get in there. Hi.
Hi.
I don't know who signed me up, but thank God that they did. I have volunteered for Sharon at the warming shelter down in Taft. Found it to be a fabulous place for people to be able to go. There is a difference between homeless that want help and homeless that don't ask for it and don't need it and don't want it. The people that are coming to the warming shelter are wanting help. They're wanting help getting birth certificates. They're wanting help getting their food handlers cards so they can go to work. And I think it's a great program. I have volunteered and done many nights there, spending the night with these people that are there, awake my whole time, and people saying to me, thank you for doing what you're doing, because nobody has stayed awake before. They do stay awake now to make sure that everybody feels safe. When you close your eyes at night, you want to know that he's not going to come over and hit you because he's mad at you. Okay? I'd like to invite all of you, because many of you have not been to the warming shelter. You do need to come and see what it's all about. The people that do come there are not there because they have nowhere else to go. A lot of them, people such as myself, I have a home, but there's many of them that are my age that are coming there because on those very cold nights, they can't stay in their car at night. They cannot stay in maybe the mobile home that they're in that's got leaks and winds. But I do want to invite all of you, if you haven't been, to come and see what it's all about so that you can make an honest and truthful decision about this. As far as the traffic, there's no more traffic there than the traffic coming and going out of the medical building and out of the motor department that's there.
Okay.
Okay?
Time's up.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Ms. Garrett.
Mhm.
Mike.
Do please come see us.
Yes. Mike Tradhoff?
I'm going to tool right around here so I don't run into anything.
Is there a mic? Mike? We have a Mike in the house? Mike. What's your last name, Mike? No, that's not it.
You just thought that was your last name.
I'm looking for someone with the last name Tratov. Okay, okay. Susan Walke.
Good evening.
Hi, Susan.
Good evening. My name's Susan Waukee, and I will address comprehensive plan, the adequacy of the site, the adequacy of the streets and highways, and the impact on the neighborhood.
Okay.
I live in the neighborhood west of the office park where the subject building is located. I also am very familiar with this building as I worked in the building for 13 years. First of all, I want to thank Chance for moving the picnic table away from Devil's Lake Boulevard, since at times there were people sitting on the curb with their dogs and created a traffic hazard. I appreciate that Chance has reacted to public concerns. It's been obvious for many years that an emergency shelter has been needed in our area. For many years, a local church provided shelter. Then the Lincoln City Warming Shelter was formed and operated in the Taft area. I appreciate the fact that they have found another building. They have searched for years and years, and I am so happy that that building is not sitting empty and that it's being used. You've raised concerns tonight about safe local foot traffic pathways and the need for 24-hour restroom facilities. Those concerns exist whether there's a warming shelter operated or not. I believe that there is good sidewalk plans currently underway. Lighting would help also, but that's not the warming shelter's responsibility to fix our pedestrian inadequacies. At this location, there's bus service, county health offices in the same office park, and parole and probation office inside the building. This is an appropriate location for an emergency shelter. I thank you for your service on the Planning Commission, and I urge you to approve Chance's conditional use permit application with reasonable conditions that you determine. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Susan. Okay, I'm gonna go back and see if Christopher and Shayna came back in the room. No? And Mike, not that Mike, the other Mike. I'm sorry, can you wait till you get to the microphone? Who are you? There we go, okay.
All I gotta say is, the warm shelter helped me.
Would you speak into the microphone, please?
I'm a clean person. They helped me get off the streets, helped me get a job, get my food handler's card. I'm working full-time. Now I got a place to live. That's all I have to say. They do help people. And what's the word I'm looking for? The warming shelter has other programs, like they have computers where we can look for jobs. They have computers so we can get our food handlers cards. They have computers where we can search for jobs. It's a great place to get us off the streets and get us warm and help us. That's all I have really to say.
Thank you, Mike. Okay. Karen King? Is that close? Did you want to speak? This is the opposed part? Pardon me? I just changed sheets, yes, sorry. Oh, holy cow, wait a minute. Wait a minute, you're absolutely right. I just went to the wrong one. Are you Rebecca? Come on up, Rebecca. Sorry about that, either one.
Hello, my name is
There's
Rebecca
a
McGee.
I'm sorry, I messed up a whole bunch of these, because apparently there are 2 more full pages of in favor. But I'm gonna have you go ahead first,
Okay.
since you're there.
Thank you, I
and then-
appreciate that.
And then I'll go back. Sorry, you guys. Okay.
I'm a resident of Lincoln City and I live on Northeast Voyage Avenue. I'm here tonight to voice some concerns I have regarding the conditional use permit for Chance Resource Center to be used as a cold weather shelter. I would like to preface these remarks by saying I recognize there's a genuine need for services to the homeless in Lincoln City and that there are no simple solutions. My primary concern with granting the Chance building the permission to provide overnight shelter is one of safety. There is no safe access to the current location on East Devils Lake Boulevard, I guess it is, for people who are not driving a car or receiving a ride. I'm especially concerned about people walking from the Logan Road direction on the shoulder or what passes for a shoulder on a major highway that's heavily traveled at all hours. There are parts of that stretch of road that are mere feet from the white line that could be called a shoulder and are certainly not safe for pedestrians, bicycles, skateboards to travel on. It's highly distracting to drivers to encounter pedestrians, cyclists hauling bikes and trailers, strollers, dogs, shopping carts, etc., whether they're going to the shelter or not. There is no middle lane to veer into should a dog get loose or a person move into traffic, etc. I don't want to have a collision with the person who might very possibly be wearing black without reflective gear on a dark, rainy night headed to the shelter for services. Nor do I want to worry about an early morning encounter with someone leaving that location and traveling back towards town with their gear in tow. I appreciate the efforts Chance is making towards being good neighbors to the rest of the neighborhood, but I do wonder about the overall suitability of a substance abuse program located across the street from a pot dispensary and just a few blocks from family housing. Thank you for this opportunity to voice my concerns.
Thank you, Rebecca. Okay, I'm going back to the in favor sheet. I apologize, the pages were hiding. So the first 3 that are listed are Amelia, Jeff, and Amanda. Did you want to waive any more comments until? Okay, come on up, Amanda.
I wasn't really able to finish what I was trying to say earlier with the slides because I ran out of time, so I could use this time. We've served a total of 1,031 people, and on the slide that I had, we had a breakdown of that, and 60% of those people are men, 30% of those people are women, and 10% of our population that we serve are families with children, which historically we haven't done much of supporting families, but since we have had a year-round operation, that has since changed. The ratio for local versus transient percentage has also changed. Historically, when we had just a warming shelter, it was 60% transient and 40% local. In the last couple of years, that percentage has changed by 13%. We now serve 53% local and 47% transient. So most of our population, or over half of our population that we serve, are actually locals versus transients. There's a couple of facts that I want to just kind of bring forth. Myths and facts. A myth is that the Resource Center / warming shelter brings crime to the area. Out of over 2,000 incidences that occurred in all of Lincoln City between December 16, 2018 and November 17th of 2019, 0.6 or less than 1% of incidences were at or in the close neighborhood of the Resource Center warming shelter. Another myth is that homeless services bring more homeless to the area. The fact is that there was a 21% drop in the average number of users for the warming shelter between season 2017-18 and 2018-19 due to the expansion of more homeless services with the creation of the Resource Referral Program. Another myth is that people who use the warming shelter don't have any intention of changing their lives. The fact is 24% of warming shelter users seek more services through the resource referral program, and 73% of those people are a success within 2 to 6 months. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Amanda. James Jansen.
It's actually Jim Jansen. That's okay.
Somebody wrote James.
That was me.
Okay, well.
That's what happens. I'm affiliated with Chance just because I'm their IT person and do all the work for them as far as putting up the cameras and all the rest of it. I have spent an enormous amount of time in that building, and people talk about the fence going in the back and keeping everything separate. The kids would kill us if we did that. All the kids going to high school use that pathway across the parking lot to go to school. So if you shut that off, you're not going to have happy kids. I have seen, Jeff's my partner, so I have seen the drugs and everything else associated with it, and the night is the worst time for people because they go out and they use. So I was also part of PAC West, the fire department, and I was a short-time dispatcher for the Lincoln City Police Department. So I've seen people out at their worst and at their best. So it's better to pick up somebody and take them to a warming shelter than to take them to a hospital or a morgue. And I'd hate to see somebody die on the street than to get services to get them out of it. The last thing I have is smoking. I used to be an ex-smoker and flick my ashes wherever I wanted to all the time, and I hate the smell of smoke. It is offensive to me. I hate the casino because of that, and I think that it's an ordinance that needs to be passed by the city, not by a council, not by anybody else, but something to keep the ashes, the smoking intact, whatever it takes. So, thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Jim.
Thank you.
Sean Strobel? Okay. Sharon Padilla.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm the volunteer coordinator at the warming shelter. However, I didn't plan on speaking because my partners here do a great job. But I have a volunteer couple that come and cook for me, and they wrote this letter, so I told them I'd read it for them since they couldn't be here. To whom it may concern, my husband and I are volunteers at the shelter. We have no ownership in the area of the shelter and don't have a dog in this fight, as some would say. However, we feel strongly that the shelter needs to be in place and a safe and warm environment provided for the homeless. We would ask you to think about the last time you dashed in the house or to the car when the wind is blowing rain sideways. Those who come to the shelter do not have a house or car to dash to for protection. Their only chance of being out of the inclement weather is the shelter. Please keep an open mind and listen to the facts presented by the shelter employees. Thank you. Sincerely, Marie and Pete Durrett. Thank you.
Sharon, would you provide that letter to James, please, as part of the written record, right here on the end? Thank you. David Peltier?
Hi, I'm Dave Peltier. I've co-founded nonprofit corporations. I've worked on the homeless issue 25 years. Our community has many profound needs which are hidden often. We have a lot of veterans that were served by the Lincoln City Warming Shelter, 10% of their clientele. We have 100,000 veterans sleeping on the streets of America right now. We see more and more women in vulnerable situations. The Lincoln County School District articulates that there's 1,000 children homeless at risk in Lincoln County, Oregon. We worked 7 years to create transitional housing in South Lincoln County and failed. So we welcome very much Chance Incorporated to come into our community and help our people and help stabilize homeless populations. The Oregonian newspaper has estimated that there's 38,000 homeless people in the state of Oregon. We are beyond crises in this regard. I wish to honor Sharon Padilla and Amanda Cherry Holmes, my friends, who run the Resource Center right now. They are some of the most dedicated people I've seen in 40 years being a political activist. We have an affordable housing crisis which exacerbates the homeless situation, and we must move forward as a society to create more affordable housing for all of our people. Housing is a crucial element in a successful, productive society, and our people are hurting. My Christian colleague, Jeff Austin out of Seal Rock, could not make it here. A woman lost her housing in Seal Rock. She had a stroke. She has a 2.5-year-old boy. She had sepsis hit her. She's had some toes amputated. I'm going to be babysitting in a few days for her 2.5-year-old boy, who I called a screech owl. Okay, and I don't have any kids. I've never married. But we must take care of women and children. We must take care of veterans. We must take care of mentally ill persons. Let's move forward. With your vote in support of this beautiful facility and wonderful building, we can help people in our community, and we can make Lincoln City a better place.
Thank you, David. David Elton.
Hello, my name is David Elton. I live on the beach, but I'm fairly close by. I've been I suppose you could say, a longtime supporter of the warming shelter. I formerly served on the board for Homeless Solutions, and I try to help out Amanda and Sharon whenever I can, whether it's pillows and blankets or fried chicken and bowls. Or I'm one of the volunteers that prefers to do the graveyard shift. I'm a writer, and I'm up sometimes all night anyway, and I happen to be a big guy. If there's men that can be troublesome, I kind of stand in their way. All the times I volunteered overnight at the shelter in Taft, that only happened one time, and it didn't come to fisticuffs or anything, but you know, sometimes people locked in overnight get a little bit fussy, and so I can tell you that I've had a very good experience with that. I'd also like to tell you that you know, some of the people behind, I have compassion for them, because I occasionally have problems at my place with people that I have to deal with, that, you know, when someone comes and gets in your garbage at your house, kind of bugs you a little bit. But I have compassion for people that are in that stage of life, and for the people sitting behind me that are here opposing this, the so-called NIMBY or not in my backyard, I'd ask them to just think about the fact that we're all here. We all probably want to help people that are down on their luck, less fortunate than those of us that have homes. So one of the mitigation things that I've offered to Sharon and Amanda is that before I knew that we got approved, I had offered that we could possibly provide the financial funding to build a fence, if needed, behind the facility to provide a barrier between that and the very close by people in the apartment complex. And I still make that offer if that is needed as a condition for this permit. It sounds like it might not be needed, and I wasn't aware of the problem with smoking, but I don't see that as a real problem. But we've financially supported the warming shelter for a few years now, and we have the capacity to do that. And so I would ask you to vote for this. It's only December 1st through February 28th. And on those rainy, cold nights, like last night, it was really, you know, got up to 30 miles an hour. We should have compassion for those people and help them if at all possible. So I hope you vote in support of Chance and this temporary use permit. Thank you.
Thank you. Philip Bowles.
Good evening. What I would like to do is I want to thank Chance, I want to thank Sharon, I want to thank Sean, I want to thank Amanda. I have lived in this area now and own a home. In fact, we own 2 homes here, and have been here for the last 4 years, of which one of the years I volunteered at the warming shelter when it was held at the church. Prior to that, I was homeless for 18 years. I'm a Vietnam vet who came back with PTSD. I was a medic in the Army, and I had a lot of problems, both mental, and I was addicted to drugs for 32 years. And if it had not been for the compassion of some people that I know, I would probably still be locked up in prison, because they broke that cycle of me thinking nobody cares, nobody gives a damn. We have an opportunity here in Lincoln City to help out people who are less fortunate than we are. I was a peer support with the Veteran Association in Portland, helping to house our homeless veterans, many of which lived out in the streets, had nowhere to go. I saw a few of them die. I felt personally responsible because I had not worked hard enough to convince people to open their hearts and their minds and help people who are less fortunate. I'm asking you to, when your consideration, to please think. We have that of, I was raised at Boys Town. He ain't heavy father, he's me brother. These are your brothers and sisters out here who are suffering. Think about them. Think about if you were in their condition, would you want some help? With that, thank you.
Thank you for your service, Mr. Bowles. Richard Lauren? Richard Larson. I'm sorry, I'm old.
First of all, I want to thank each one of you for your service. What you do is incredible. You make such important decisions. I went to 2 of these sessions last year for volunteers, but I didn't volunteer. There's a disconnect. Where I live in my world, I just see the people on the streets. I don't have any. I see the holding the signs up, and sometimes I look the other way. So when my wife Kathy and I took a donation to the Resource Center or the Chance Center, and we saw Sharon again that did the volunteer meetings. And we met some of the people that were there during the day. And it was so touching to us because these are real people like you and I, but they just haven't had the break yet that they need to get on their feet. I also looked around from the center and all those houses and apartments, and I thought, whoa, how would it be to live and have people wandering around that couldn't get into the center or are waiting to get in the center? And I felt for those people too. I don't know the answer. It's all across the nation. Like Dave was saying earlier, that it's all across the nation. And you have a big decision ahead of you too. And I'll pray for you. And I thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Larson. Brian Ogle.
Hello, my name is Brian Ogle, and I just want to say my mom and I have been up here for about 10 months now, relocating. We love the area up here, and for reasons we feel safer up here than where we were before, with a larger crime and violence and homeless population where we were from, and we want what everybody else wants. We want safety and warmth, and we found that at the Chance shelter when it was in Taft. And I want to thank Sharon and Amanda and Sean for opening their hearts to us. And we just we want to give housing and jobs and all that, and they are really providing that for us, and kind of showing us the way. And I just beg you, please, keep the Chance building open. And thank you.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to give everybody a second to turn your cell phones off, because the next one that goes off is mine. I need a new one. We would really appreciate it if you would stick to the criteria of the shelter. It's, when you're talking about supporting it, you can support, I suppose, the size of the building, the fact that it provides the, what has been proposed in the ordinance, but try to stay on it if you could, please. Janice Humbert. Another option, since it's 8 o'clock and we're moving through these lists, if somebody else has already said what you want to say or expressed the same thing, you can say ditto to what they said. And then we can move along maybe a little faster. Janice?
Good evening. My name is Janice Humbert.
Could you speak into the mic, please? Thank you.
I'm here to ask you to keep the Lincoln City shelter open for homeless people and keep people safe for the programs that they have and what they do for us. Sean, Sharon, and Amanda, they've been really good to us since we go there, and this is our only place for warmth, a hot meal, and a hot shower, and friendship of the other people going through what everybody else is going through. They do a fantastic job in keeping this place clean and keeping the good people in and the ones who don't care out. They help us in so many ways. Please don't take this away from us. We need it very bad. Thank you.
Thank you. Deborah Mudge? Is there a Deborah M. in the house? Okay, how about Carl Massey?
Hi.
Hi.
My name's Carl. I moved here in August with my fiance. She didn't answer. It's Deborah Mudge. She didn't want to come up here and say. But as far as the homeless, when we moved here, the place in Taft, it helped us. We still live in a van. But Sharon, Amanda, and Sean, they've done nothing but help in a positive aspect. I ended up getting a job the second day I was here. And now the new place, I volunteer. I do what I can to help them. I've even been asked to help, like security, even though somebody my size haven't had to do anything because we haven't had any problems. But I'd keep going back there, and that building is the perfect place. You know, they got plenty of room. They got all the volunteers they need to help them in any way. And all I ask is, you know, you guys think about it, because they're doing everything they can to help keep people off the streets. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Gregory Soldner. Soldner?
My name is Gregory Soldner. I want to just ditto a lot of the things that folks had said. Chance and Sharon, Amanda, and Sean have helped me a great deal, and now I'm a grateful volunteer there. And I hope you can see compassion to keep folks warm in the winter. Thank you very much.
Thank
I
you.
yield.
Thank you for being concise. Gary Cox.
My name is Gary Cox, and I live on just right on the street adjacent to West Devils Lake or Northeast Devils Lake Boulevard on Cascara Court, and we've had a lot of problems up there with the transients coming up there and urinating on the bushes around the house, garbage all over the place, and I just wonder what they're going to do about all these problems that are being created. Instead of all the testimony I've heard so far, there's not been one resident so far that I know of. It's all been people that are associated with this facility. And I understand that they need to have a facility, but what was wrong with the facility they had in Taft? Anybody want to answer that?
I think they lost.
We were not allowed to be there anymore.
By who?
Well, this isn't.
Okay, we're not going to get into a
Yeah,
back and forth here. Gary, do you have specific criteria that you're concerned about? That it sounds like adverse impact in the neighborhood, and I believe Rebecca is a neighbor as well. So someone else has. I Yes, you did. Yes, you did. You're on the in favor sheet. That's why I'm just a little perplexed here. I
Well,
think
I
you
don't
may
know.
have signed the wrong.
Frankly,
up
when I
on
came
the
in and
wrong
signed on that
but-
sheet, I didn't know that's what
but-
this was all
so
about.
your concern is focused on the adverse impact in the neighborhood. Is that what I'm
Absolutely.
hearing? Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
You know, I had a bunch of them come through the neighborhood here about a week and a half ago, where one of the girls in the group reached down and picked up a bunch of stuff in my area, or on my lot, and put it in her pocket and took off. And I think what it was polished rocks that I had in the drainage. But still, the point is that they're coming in there and violating my property, you know? And I also had a situation where one of the girls was up there picking up stuff in the Salah, and she had her stuff sitting on the sidewalk, her belongings, and when she seen us walk by, we were just walking our dog, and when she seen us walk by, she comes screaming down there, "Leave my stuff alone, you're going to steal my stuff." And I talked to her just a second and said, "We don't want your stuff, you know, we're just walking by." But she was obviously high, without a doubt. And then a few minutes later, a police officer came by looking for her. And he stopped and talked to me and see if I'd seen her, and I said yes. And so they went down the street looking for her, but she had disappeared. And about an hour later, I was going to the store, and I went by the shelter there, and she was sitting outside but with some boys smoking there before they moved that picnic table. So, you know, and then the other thing I can't believe that they're allowing to happen here is that putting it right next to all those apartment buildings, which is clear full of little kids.
Okay. Thank you, Gary. Your time's expired. Your 3 minutes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is Uta your wife? You want to speak? Okay. Okay, thank you. Samantha Udanch. Udanch? Samantha? That's you. Ah.
Child's old enough to testify.
Hi, I'm Samantha Udach, and this is Hank. I'm a homeowner here in Lincoln City. I'm not affiliated with the warming shelter in any way. I do work as a tech in an emergency room, and I just want to bring up that warming shelters, such as the one we're discussing tonight, are beneficial not only for the homeless that utilize them, but also for the general public as well. When people are left outside in cold and dangerous weather, they often end up in the emergency room, and that's taking up a bed and extending wait times for people with other medical emergencies. So I'd like to thank all those who work to care for those in crisis, and close by saying that if you aren't willing to help those in need, at least get out of the way of those who are. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Hank. Please don't, please don't. Becky White. Becky White?
Provided written testimony. She had to return home to her
Okay.
children.
Oh, boy. Catherine? Catherine? Ariel. Okay. I'll buy that.
So good evening, and thank you for your service. I just found out about this meeting 2 hours before it started, but I felt that I wanted to come and talk a little bit about the shelter. I understand that you're talking about specifically about the location. I personally think the location is a good one for the most part. It has a few challenges, but overall, it is a really good location for something like this, especially in conjunction with the Chance facility. Several years ago, I was homeless, and at the time, I was living in Mount Shasta, California. The facilities there for people in my situation were non-existent, and people like us ended up camping in the rain and in the snow unless we could find some place to go. I also had my dogs, and there was a shelter up in Wairika, but it did not take dogs. So I had no place to go. Fortunately, I did have a car. So when I listen to what's going on here and the stereotypes that tend to occur around these things, I really encourage people to take a step back and understand that anybody can end up homeless at the drop of a dime. I've seen it happen over and over and over again, and we absolutely have to help each other. But this facility and its location, as far as Lincoln City as a whole, I think is a very good location. If we need to put a fence up to protect the apartment buildings, the offering has been made to make that happen. And the sidewalk going down from East Devils Lake and West Devils Lake to that area, I understand there is a sidewalk in consideration that the casino is talking about putting in. Sorry, I couldn't remember the name of it. Because there are so many residents that walk along 101 and it's not safe. So I don't think that really has anything to do with the shelter as a whole. I think that we need to put a sidewalk in there just in general for safety purposes. So that's all I will say. I am so grateful to everyone who is helping, and it is such an amazingly important thing to have a shelter where there is also a resource center that is helping people get on their feet. Because when you don't have a roof over your head and you can't eat and take a bath, you cannot get a job, much less move forward and get home. And I know that from experience.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So just to give you guys an update here, there's 4 more names here on the in favor. I understand how hard it is to sit and wait, but we're going to get there. So we have 4 more, and then we'll go to the other list. Genevieve Tolbert. There, Genevieve. Genevieve. Not here. Okay. Marlon Tolbert. Marlon. Okay. Patrick, see how quick This is going. Patrick Alexander.
Good evening, members of the Planning Commission. My name is Patrick Alexander, and I'm a resident of Lincoln City. I do want to keep my testimony very brief, as I know that there are quite a few more people who want to speak after me. Judging by the application and the staff report, it seems that the substantive criteria are met or can be met with reasonable conditions. Some people like me will be in favor of this application, and others will oppose it. Some of that opposition is prompted by concerns about the impact of homeless individuals in the area around the building in question, and those concerns are understandable. However, the presence of Chance's daytime homeless resource facility is not at issue tonight. The daytime facility and the activity that accompanies it is allowed outright in a commercially zoned area. Denying this application will not make that facility nor that activity go away. The only question at issue tonight is whether Chance should be allowed to open their doors to the needy on cold nights this winter. And the only impact of denying this application would be to ensure that Chance's clients, some of the most vulnerable members of our community, have nowhere to go on nights when temperatures drop below 40 degrees. Rather than being indoors, warm, safe, under supervision, and with access to restrooms, these people would be out in the open, trying to find shelter wherever they can. Denying the application would not only be a mistake from a moral point of view, but also from a purely pragmatic one. I urge you to approve the application with such conditions as you see fit to ensure an orderly operation. Thank you.
Thank you. Jay Roloff.
My comments will be addressing item 4, which has to do with adverse impact on the community. My name is Jay Roloff. I was the chair of the outreach committee at the Congregational Church, and so my committee ran the warming shelter when it was a church-run facility. We just couldn't keep it up because it conflicted with our church programs. I then helped form the 501(c) that became a community warming shelter, and it ended up in Taft. When that was dissolved and Chance took over, I left the board, and now it's being run up here across from the DMV. Getting to that point about the adverse effect, I'll just say ditto to what Patrick said before me. As you know, he was president and I was vice president of the Lincoln City Warming Shelter when it was in Taft. My point to you is that when I ran this program and my committee ran it when it was in my church, we only had at most a dozen to 2 dozen people. We sometimes got close to 30, but only on those nights when the temperatures were below 40. In Taft, it was even less, the number of people that we would have on those nights when the temperatures were below 40. And this is the same policy that Chance wants to follow. So we're focusing and should be focused on whether we should allow that facility during a 3-month period to open its doors on the nastiest nights of the winter. And we don't have that many nights where the temperatures are below 40. We're very lucky. We live in a temperate zone. So I would like to add perspective to this discussion tonight. It's really about opening the doors in an existing resource center 3 months out of the year when the temperatures are below 40
And that's it. In my experience, the number of times we had contiguous nights with those conditions were very few, 2, maybe 3 at the very most. I would ask everybody in the room, and you in particular, commissioners, to focus on that issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Jay. Okay. Nathan Neat.
Hi, my name is Nathan Neat. I'd like to present on criteria 4, the adverse effects of the community. But first, let me give you a little background on myself. I was previously homeless in Bend over 3 years ago for a period of 3 times. They have different shelters, different resources there than you guys do here. This town is not equipped to be attracting more homeless community here, people who aren't ready to get out on their feet. Point I'd like to speak from is I work at a hotel here in town. That is our economy here, tourism. The draw of drawing people to our town that are not seeking to be citizens, to be productive members of society is out there. I walk, I don't drive. I hear people all the time, hey, I've heard that there's this new warming shelter coming, and they're like, well, let's come up from Bend. I hear people from California, from Washington. We're drawing people with this. There is not, from what I've heard, any good set of rules or regulations that would not draw people from other communities that would actually help support citizens here. I have not heard if they require you have ID to prove you're a citizen to get in. I'm all for, helping our community and our citizens, but this is having an adverse effect. I'm hearing people come up who are saying, hey, we can live on the beach and then we can stay at the warming shelter when it gets cold. There is an adverse effect that you guys are not taking into account, and I want that to be considered. We are going to lose our main source of economy if we are drawing more homeless people to this community. I already have people who come up from the beach and say, I'm finding needles all over the street, all over the beach. People are saying, I don't know if I really want to keep coming here if this draw is going to be associated with this town. Something to seriously consider. How are we protecting our citizens versus are we drawing more people here that are homeless and that do not want to provide, do not want to be productive members of society? That's what I have to say.
Thank you, Nathan. Pepper Smelser.
My name is Pepper Smelser, and I live in the neighborhood adjacent to Chance. And it says that it's in general commercial, but the majority of that neighborhood is residential. We don't feel safe. The people that hang out around Chance, before they moved the picnic table behind the building, were sitting on the curb with their legs in the streets, with their dogs, smoking. There was a pantsless man masturbating in front of the pot shop, which is across the street from Chance. I mean, there's families that live there with children. 101 is not a safe place to walk on, and we know it's dark before 5 o'clock. The shelter doesn't open until 6. So
that wasn't
yours.
Anyway, I want you to consider the fact that this isn't the appropriate place for that to be. It shouldn't be in a residential neighborhood, which is what it is. Thank you.
Thank you. Joe Smelser? Ditto. Thank you, Joe. Mindy Landry. Okay, yeah, you can give them to James.
This is a whole new city council since the last time I was here. Hello. Okay, so my name is Mindy Landry.
Are these the photos that you just gave?
Possibly,
Okay.
Those are actually like real photos that you can see.
Okay, thank you.
So my name is Mindy Landry, and I own.
You speak
Into the mic, please.
I own Left Coast Property Management in Lincoln City, and I have been managing the Windward Place apartments since the complex opened in 2016. I also manage 2 other, actually brand-new homes at 4682 and 4687 Northeast Windward Place. And I am here to speak for the owner of that home as well, and that is Ivan Cam. This has always been a super quiet neighborhood, and I actually was involved in the development and rezoning of that neighborhood for workforce housing. And let's see, so in September, things dramatically changed, and I have witnessed people sleeping up against the warming shelter building in the middle of the day, and I have had to repeatedly ask that their clients stay off of Windward Place property. I would also like to ask where the property manager or manager of Chance is on the property. I have emailed the owner of the building regarding the issues I have had and not gotten a response. Why are they not continually working to ensure that these situations aren't happening? I have put in more than 20 unpaid hours dealing with safety issues that were never an issue before. Phone calls and texts coming in starting at 7 a.m. and having to call the police. The shelter property is a no smoking campus, so their clients are being kicked off of Windward Place property or standing in the median in the middle of the street on West Devils Lake Boulevard. Almost running them over is a real hazard. Last week, a woman was standing in the median yelling profanities, throwing rocks at cars. Tenants couldn't get through for fear of having rocks thrown at their cars. The dumpster diving has increased dramatically, and the garbage enclosure has been an absolute mess. It is secured with a shut door with a fence all around the garbage enclosure. My tenants are finding people inside the garbage enclosure when they go to put their garbage in the garbage enclosure. Let's see. Okay, so they have also have complaints of door handles being jiggled in the evenings, at night, in an attempt to see if a door is actually open. My assistant lives on site and was taking her garbage out in the middle of the day just a few days ago and had a homeless man make eye contact with her, and then he started charging towards her. She said he was clearly under the influence of something, and she was scared and pulled out her cell phone to call 911. A car pulled in, and a neighbor was coming outside, and when he saw this, he retreated, and these issues are new occurrences since September. Complaints that were so many people smoking outside, I'll be done soon. There's so many people smoking outside just feet away from people's apartments that they can't even open their windows. And I'm not against the fact that there's a need for assistance to help persons who are experiencing homelessness. I'm against it being in such a close proximity to a property that houses so many families, and it's only about 50 to 100 feet at most. The real of this situation is that they are in fact under the influence of alcohol and drugs. On the occasions I have confronted trespassers, they smell so strongly of alcohol, I can smell it from 10 feet away. A majority of this entire neighborhood has lived here for years, and it has dramatically changed in 2 short months it has been open. I brought in the pictures that I have taken, and I contacted code enforcement the first week that they opened due to the issues I have already mentioned. I told him I was going to take pictures of the complaints I had. He asked me not to, because it wasn't safe. Why is it not safe? Because they are under the influence. These people are not of their right mind, and there's no way someone under the influence is. I want my tenants safe. We all want to come home and feel secure. This shelter is robbing these residents of a quiet enjoyment of the property they reside at. It's illegality when they sign their lease that they won't disrupt the quiet enjoyment of their neighbors. In closing, I'm going to ask council members, why is it okay for the neighboring property, because it's zoned general commercial, to rob them of that quiet enjoyment and security?
Thank you.
Before you leave, excuse me, you're the person that emailed a video?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Do the photos that you submitted represent the same thing that's in the video?
No, the video is actually of people in the street, bicycle with trailer in a turn lane, trying to cross traffic. He crossed on a red light. The reason why I actually started videoing is because it was super precarious. And then he went into oncoming traffic going up West Devils Lake Boulevard, and then went and stopped at the warming shelter outside, actually on the street.
So the planning commission will have to decide, not this moment, but whether or not you want to be able to look at that video, whether or not this summary of what's on the video is sufficient.
Also, if I may, one more, I'm like in charge of this whole entire neighborhood, so I did go in and talk with the warming shelter staff. I asked for numerous things, the non-smoking, the people off of our property. None of that has changed. Also, when I went upstairs to, I can't remember the office I went to, but they were just using yellow tape to block off parts of their office. Like stairs were just yellow taped, and you had to like walk under the tape. So I don't know how secure that is. And the 2 kennels, there's at best, 4 or 5 dogs outside at all times. And where are they gonna go when they're done? Like, before they get there and when they leave, if it's where are they going to go? Because the whole neighborhood is completely different.
Okay. Thank you. John Rishworth? John?
My name's John Rishworth, and I live right across the street from the shelter. And in September, they started hanging out in my dumpster and just crawling all over the yard. I have a 5-year-old severely autistic granddaughter that lives with me. And she used to love to go play out in the yard, and she was scared to go out in the yard. I found needles in my yard, and I understand that they need to go somewhere, and they need to have a warm place to sleep. But I've lived in that house since 2000, and I've never had the problems that I have now. I have to lock my car at night. I've never locked my car. I mean, it's just, they need to show the people of the neighborhood some consideration, and I'd be willing to work with them if they're willing to work with me. But as far as I'm concerned, they don't need to be there. They're not going to work with me. That's about all I got to say. Thank you.
Thank you, John. I know we've all been here a long time, so I just want to remind you all that this conditional use permit is for the operation of the warming shelter, not the operations of the day-to-day chance operations in the building, which are consistent with the zoning in the area. So, Joni Kaletka?
My name is Joni Koletka,
I'll give
and
you a
I
minute.
do live across the street from the warming shelter. I do believe that it is necessary, and I'm all for it. I am not for our neighborhood changing. I have lived there 25 years, and it is so different. I, too, have had people rattling my door. We have a homeowners association. We had a police officer talk with us to explain our part of how some of the people who use the facility there take advantage of coming through our neighborhoods, definitely getting into our trash cans all the time on the days that they are put out. The rest of the time we keep them put into our garages. We have now to keep our lights on all the time. I am a widow, and I am just trying to survive and to keep my home together. And it is true, like our other neighbors have spoken and said, We're not against people who have no homes. We are happy that there is a facility available for them to learn and for every thing that is given, for every right that we have, there is a responsibility. And when we have to live now in fear of the few who might be on drugs, which of course they're right there by them. So they were put into a neighborhood of many children and also of many senior citizens. It is very hard for us to protect ourselves. We don't sit with guns and knives in our house to protect ourselves. But when we have to keep lights on and clean up defecation and the ruination of our bushes, because it is safer if we cut them down so that they don't hide in the bushes. That's all we're asking for, is some kind of protection from those few that wander our neighborhoods on their bicycles and sometimes just walking, but they have made a big difference and have put us in a feeling of constant fear. Thank you.
Thank you, Joni. Don and Cindy Swan.
Hi, my name's Don Swan, and I own Windward Place Apartments. I just want to say, me and my wife live in Gold Beach, and we research carefully cities to invest in. Lincoln City touts itself as a family-safe city and very safe for children. That is one of the main reasons we invested here. And plus, you have a strong police force. We invested a large part of our retirement buying that apartment complex next to Windward Place. Tremendous amount of money. Our apartment complex is all 2- and 3-bedroom units. It caters to young families and children. The one thing that's very scary about the center, even the one you have approved now, is they have an aerial view of, they're right next to us, but they're higher than us. Therefore, they have a clear view of all children that are in our parking lot, and they can easily spot an unattended child, as there's many times unattended children there. If something happened, it would be tragic. We don't know who these people are, and whatever Chance is saying, they don't know who these people are. Let's be honest, they really don't. Even the police don't know who these people are. And they're coming from communities from all over, and they give fake names. They're not fingerprinting these people. We don't know who they are. They don't have identification. There's no way to identify these people. Homeless at the shelter have currently been bothering the tenants and dumpster diving. There's no supervision at that center. What they say is not true. They loiter and smoke at all hours of the day and night. This is the wrong location, as it's surrounded by tons of residential apartments and homes, children and seniors. Having it next to the DMV is a very bad impression for the city of Lincoln City. Also, it potentially opens Lincoln City to lawsuits, as Lincoln City mandates people have to go to the DMV. If a homeless person ever stabbed or hurt a mandated person going to that DMV, I was going to say, this is a foreseeable danger. Lincoln City would be liable for that, and there's no way they can get away with their insurance. It's foreseeable, and they didn't act upon it, plus they encouraged it. And I finally want to say, you have people that are going to be high as a kite, and you think they're going to know if it's 42 degrees or 40? They're all coming, all night, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock. Could you imagine living in, having that happen in your community? And these people are high. They're mentally disturbed. There's no possible way a community can survive with that. I mean, Mr. Chance, he doesn't care what happens to our community. He really doesn't. And I'm just trying to say it is very, very dangerous. And if something happened, I guarantee you Lincoln City will be facing a lawsuit. This place should be placed. This is a type zoning that should not be switched on people. This is a very, very huge change. This is a massive change. This type of zoning should only be put in an industrial area or a place that's more remote, not in the middle of a neighborhood. And the only reason they chose that building, it is a cheap rent. When they say it's a perfect building, perfect, it's all a lie. It's because it's cheap. It's cheap. And that is why they chose it. And I'm just trying to say, it is not a perfect location. It's a horrible location. And it's very unsafe for everybody in Lincoln City. And it's a really bad impression upon her when you enter Lincoln City to see that, and then when everybody goes into the DMV, it's going to see that, and I'm telling you, it's going to hurt this town. It's going to hurt tourism, which is our lifeblood, and I'm just telling you, it's not the way to go, and I hope the heck you consider it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Edna McMaster? Edna? She what? Oh, she said ditto. Yay, thank you, Edna. Tom says ditto. Okay, Teresa Moreau. Yeah. Look at this. Libby?
Could we have the map? I've been sitting back there for 2.5 hours wondering what side I'm on. I'm really.
Thank you for that.
I'm really for warming shelters. But I also say ditto to it not being in the right place. Can I point out anything on this? Oh,
Well, it's
not very big.
This will show, no, it's not.
I could point it out over there.
This is the site. I can direct
Oh,
you.
you had a more finite one a little bit ago.
Did you want okay, do we have a map that's a larger scale, smaller area?
You had one that showed, the street.
I've only shown 2 maps.
Showed that one. That's it.
All right.
Okay.
That's a little bit,
Okay, this is where I live, right there. One more, Libby. Right there. One more. There you go. Okay. No, I live 2 houses, the second house from the street. Okay. Coming in today, the school bus stopped right in front of me and let a little boy about 7 years old off right in front of this building. And there are school children here and there, within the first 5 houses on the other side of the street. I was just wondering why Dennis Regan, who is the biggest realtor in town, isn't he? Why he couldn't have found a better place for this? How about, does he own any property over here in Lighthouse Square? That could hold more people for a longer period of time. I think we ought to have it through March and April also, because then it's rainy and windy, and that's pretty horrible. Anyway, because I live very close to it, you can say I'm saying no because it's in my backyard, but it's because it's in a congested residential area, a bus hub. There are 3 school buses that stop right there on the street. And I've had problems like other people have had too. Thank you.
thank you. Karen King.
Sorry. Good evening. My name is Karen King. I live across the street. Actually, the lady who just spoke is my neighbor. The shelter is a great place, but it doesn't belong in our neighborhood. It should not be placed where there is so many families, the apartment building. I was one of the people who experienced the gentleman who was laying down on the corner, naked from the waist down. I was headed to work at 7:30 in the morning. All I can say is thank God my 12-year-old granddaughter wasn't in the car with me. I was horrified. I've never seen anything like that before in my neighborhood, and I really don't want to see anything like that again. Please move it. Yes, there's a need, but it doesn't need to be there. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. David and Betty Wilson. David, Betty Wilson? No Wilson? Okay. Fran Lonan?
Good evening.
Hi.
I think you all have my email that I
Yes.
sent. The other thing that I wanted to address is this Lincoln City owns what? How many acres up on the Commons area? If you want to sell that piece of property and these investors have to go through Devil's Lake Road and see the homeless there, the homeless shelter, how are you ever going to sell that parcel of land? I have 2 houses in this subdivision. I have a rental and I have my own house. Since Chance has moved in, we have had thefts. We have had people scoping out the neighborhood. We have had shots fired where the police came. We have cameras in our section of on Voyeur, and we record everything that's going on. And the amount of people, vagrants, since Chance has moved in, has tripled. Absolutely tripled. We're scared to walk the neighborhood anymore. And trust me, I've lived there for 4 years, and I have never seen this kind of outright hoodlums coming into the neighborhood, and it's scary. We are finding hypodermic needles over by where the low-income housing is. You find tents, all kinds of stuff up in the common areas, in the area that the city is trying to get investors to. Plus, we had the other day a sign that said drug IV exchange, needle exchange, and HIV testing. That might be the health department, but we don't need that. People coming in to Lincoln City. People are tired in Salem and in Portland and Seattle of the homeless and what it's doing to their communities. They want to come to Lincoln City to get away from that. And if you put it right there at that particular area, that's the first thing they're going to see. And how is that going to affect our tourism? It's going to go in the pot. People are going to say, well, I might as well stay in Portland. That's all I got.
Thank you, Fran. Jim Lonan?
Well, that was my wife. I'll just add to it. My day starts at 5:30 in the morning. I drive to Newport. I work for NOAA. I drive around, people dressed in dark colors, walking down to 101, walking down Devil's Lake Road, stand out in the middle of the street, and I'm afraid one of these days I may run over them. That's one problem. They walk from McDonald's down the shoulder of the road, turn, go in the DMV, and then there's a homeless shelter. They had a picnic table there, and they took it away. Somebody had a dog that was big as a horse tied to it, and there was 4 or 5 of them, and they just edge out to the street. Somebody's going to run over them. We have a lot of elderly people that live back where I live. I'm 72. I'm one of the youngest people back there, actually. My wife, we've had shots fired right behind her house. There's about 5 rounds fired. There's 4 cop cars out there and a detective. They stopped at the cul-de-sac. They didn't even go down the ravine to look to see what was going on. Don't know why. It's part of the Indian reservation, and a habitat area. But my drive in the morning, I got to watch out for all this stuff going on. And people walking around with children, at 3 and 4 school buses. They park down the road there by the casino. They come around and then they come back and they drop kids off in the neighborhood. They drop them off in the apartment complexes. There's 2 of them. There's a very large one and a small one. You can't walk your dog or take a walk back there around where they want to put this shelter because of the needles. If you're not going to get one in your foot, the dog's going to get it. You know, and homeless people don't scare me because, you know, they just don't bother me. But there's other people don't want anything to do with it. It's ruining the neighborhood. We have cameras. I bought cameras for my rental, and I bought cameras for us. It's on Ring. In the neighborhood, the people that's on that Ring system gives updates within about a mile. And it shows people dipsy diving in their dumpsters and stuff like that, going through their trash. We had a woman walk in her backyard, and I got a 6-foot drop off in her backyard. She was walking on the retaining wall, and then there was woods, and I had an electric fence up because we didn't want the deer to come in and eat all my wife's plants. And she just strolling along. I didn't know where she was going. I was afraid she was going to fall off. If she would have, guess it would have been libel. You know, it'd be sue time. So we had to build a fence to keep people off her wall. A contractor that lives across the street from me, there was things stolen out of his truck. He had like $1,500 deductible, so the insurance didn't pay for it. The one next door to me, he's a tree trimmer. They stole stuff out of his truck. And I don't know why he did, but he wasn't happy. And it just seems like you have a huge amount of children back there, and you got a huge amount of retirees, and you got these homeless people that are wanting money and stuff. And if somebody's unaccompanied, whether it be a young person or an elderly person walking, they're probably going to reach in their pocket and give them a buck or whatever they may have just to get them away from them. So to me, it's a danger hazard. And then that building's old. And they said, well, you're going to bring it up to fire codes and all that stuff. I don't know if there's sprinkler systems in there or not, but that thing really needs to be brought up to code. And I don't know if the fire marshal's been in there or not, but I think if you got a fire marshal in there, they're going to really put their eye to it. And my main concern is the shots fired, because I don't want a bullet going through my window hitting me or my wife or even my dog or a neighbor. That's not fun. And in that green area I'm talking about, the homeless are camped there right now. They camped there. They've dumped 2 cars there in the last year and a half. One of them was on county property. So we called the county, and what they did was come up and put these dilapidated barricades over their 100 by 100 area to block it from people dumping cars. But you go on past the golf course and going through that area that's partially developed where it dead ends in the woods, there's always a car there that's been abandoned. And I don't think we have to put up with it, you know, and I think it's a danger to the neighborhood, and I'd like to see them put that homeless shelter in an industrial area, not in an area where you're surrounded by 2 major apartment complexes and urban density. Thanks.
Thank you. Wilson DeLuca. Wilson? Bruce Croft.
I just want to say, first off, I enjoy the free speech. I think we should listen to each other. It's great to be mindful. The worst thing that happens to you, I guess you change your mind. Greatest thing is you reinforce your opinion. And to think, I just want to say, to think that people who might be against this aren't compassionate, that's wrong. They're compassionate, same as the people who support it. Everyone probably wants to help everyone else. But there's also caution. And when you have things like down in Southern California, people see, and people are scared of that. Okay, you have LA, you have San Francisco, you have an issue. And people are afraid this might be a stepping stone for something more than just a warming shelter. I heard it. That's great. You have conditions. 40 degrees? That's a good idea. That's not too much to ask. Is it on, like, say, private property? Okay, I can't stop you. What if you had someone on your couch? That's between you and the person. But if it turns into something more, well, we need actually a homeless shelter. Go to Lincoln City. People start to get concerned. I start to get concerned. I want to help. If you want to help, you can open your doors up. You can have compassion at your front door too. You don't have to live vicariously through a charity, through a shelter, through other people. It's easy to be compassionate, to be conspicuously compassionate when it's someone else paying for it too. No, you can open your hearts. I do. If I see someone homeless and I know they're safe, if they approach me, okay, how you doing? Okay, you're not crazy. Do you want a bite to eat? I'll pay for you. You can be compassionate, and we all can be. You don't have to be against it. Life's hard. To be homeless, to be a druggie sometimes, not everyone wants to be a druggie. Some are career. Not everyone is career, and they do need help. And you can do that if you put the effort in. It depends on all of us to put the step forward to help. But we cannot also encourage an environment where you just let other people enable it, where you have something like a shelter, which is not actually a bad idea for 40-degree weather for 3 months. Just, it can't turn into a place where that's where everyone goes. That's when I have to start getting concealed carry license because I'm scared. And not all of them scare me. They're very nice. But some, the mumblers, the schizophrenics, they need help. And this is a quagmire we're in. Because if you build it somewhere else, that's someone else's backyard too, and they're going to be like, I don't want it in my neighborhood. So where do you start? I guess I come from a neutral position, but I'm trying my best to hear people out, and I do hear you. I heard everyone. Okay, I listen attentively, because the worst thing that happens to me apparently is I change my opinion, which I kind of did. But I also kind of still have my opinion because I have my reasons. You have your reasons, you have yours. Good luck.
I've gone through all of the opposed, and I didn't find your name.
I signed my name on
Well, why don't you just come up here and tell us your name and state your issues?
Thank you, man. Thank you, City Council.
We're the Planning
City
Commission.
Manager.
We're not the City Council. Don't call us that.
Chief Palmer. My name is Michael Murphy. I live at 4693 Northeast Windward Place.
We can't see what you're pointing to.
4693 Windward Place.
Okay.
I've lived there for 20 years. I'm with Jack's home in these 4 duplexes, and our triplex condo was the only thing there. Unbeknownst to me, on the day they came in and bulldozed this, all of a sudden out of the blue, for an apartment complex. I came in here, listened to 2 city council meetings, and was appalled by the not communicating with the people in the area. Same thing is going on with this. The non-communication that needs to be done by who? Am I supposed to go, all right, let me get a group together and we'll go around and we'll talk to these people that live in the area that you want to put a homeless shelter in? I'm speaking for the apartment complexes. I'm speaking for the duplexes. I'm speaking for Jane, who lives in one of those duplexes, a lady that came to my door last night at 4 o'clock crying. She's an 80-year-old lady crying because they're going to put a homeless shelter right by her house. She is scared to death. October 1st, I come home. There's a group of homeless people standing there next to the picnic table. This is October 1st. Why are these homeless people standing here next to this picnic table, next to the old lawyer's firm? Couldn't figure it out. And then I figured it out. These people are living in that place October 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th to the 25th. This is where my problem exists. Why weren't we received any notice before October 1st, before they started working? And oh yeah, that's another thing. The building permit isn't taking out. They've been working on that place since October 1st. It's not being done by the law. And I'm seeing that. And hey, I'm an American. I serve. I'm a 24-year drug addict, alcoholic who is clean and sober. And I've been in the dumps. I've lived underneath a tree. I don't now. I live in that condo, which is fully paid for. I pay taxes on that condo every year. And if I'm gonna move, I'm 62 years old. I have medical conditions that I can't move. And financially, I'm on disability. And I can't afford I have lost $100,000 just in the past couple of years in my condo. It's gone from $215,000 to $115,000 in 2 years. Why? 4 years, excuse me. A wonderful apartment complex who the people there are nice. I love them all. We're all good friends. We walk our dogs together. We pick up our crap together.
Sir, the little red light's on, so your time is up, and can you get back to the issue of the warming
That's what
shelter?
my concerns are is, why did this start October 1st and we had no idea? Why isn't there a permit taken out for them to work on it, which they've been working on every night? They congregate when they're not in there outside in a little piece of grass around a picnic table because they can't smoke in that property. These are things I'm finding out already, and the place isn't even opened up yet. Picking up trash, picking up cigarettes, I don't smoke, I quit 20 years ago. Picking up cups, picking up fecal matter. In my backyard, I have a police report of it and several phone calls just in the 21 days that you guys ran this warming shelter. What's going to happen? I want to know what's going to happen when this place opens up. We have children. We have a bus stop right there, as everybody's been talking about. There's children in that apartment complex. There's older people in that apartment complex that are scared to death, and I vote no.
Thank you. We have 4 more names on the list.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Kay Dixon.
I'm Kay Dixon. I'm the HOA president for Sunridge by the Lake. When this all started and we heard about it on Facebook, I was really, really neutral. I was okay with the whole thing. But the behaviors that have come into our neighborhood, and I live about 2 blocks. I was just up from where Mrs. Durbin lives. So I've had a woman at my door begging for money. I said, "Are you hungry? I'll feed you." She said, "No, I just want money." Yes, this morning we had a gas tank emptied. You've already heard about the naked man and the dogs barking. And so our garbage goes out on Mondays. And so they ran 2 people off. We are a private PUD. We own the streets, we own the sidewalks, we own the lighting, we own the water system. It's clearly marked, private property, do not enter on both streets. Doesn't matter. We were told by a security company we need to light all 4 sides of our houses and put up cameras. Not to have a window open. Are we safe? They told us to not have our jewelry out anymore, to put it in little tiny boxes and put them in different places so that they wouldn't go through our jewelry boxes. Policeman stopped at a neighbor's. He has in the past just had his garage door open. Policeman stopped and warned him and let him know that that garage door needs to be closed. We are frightened. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dickerson. Quentin Hammery. Quentin? How about Vicky Hammery? No Vicky, no Quentin. Okay. I think it's a Murphy. Something Murphy. That was you. Well, no wonder. There you are. I just couldn't read it. Okay. Is there anybody, I can't imagine there is, but is there anybody in the room that didn't speak that wanted to? Yes, ma'am. Come forward, please.
Real quickly, I am living in that area. I got
Your
my
name,
information from you.
I'm sorry, I need your name.
Oh, Jane King.
Thank you.
I just got the information yesterday about all of this, and I don't want to pass judgment too much, but I would like more time. I'd like a continuance for this because I would like to look into it.
We haven't gotten to that point. I realize you spoke earlier, but we're going to get to the point on the
We're
script.
going to get there.
Where we asked.
I don't think, did you speak earlier?
No.
No, she hasn't spoken, but
So
don't go
somebody-
to continuance because we're
There
going to
is-
get there.
Okay, that's all I want.
Is that all you had? Okay. Okay. We have now an opportunity, is there anyone that wants to speak that's a representative of a public agency? Nope. Okay. The applicant has an opportunity for rebuttal, and it's 5?
Applicant expended all of his time during his original testimony. So I believe it would be the prerogative of the commission to...
So there was no time reserved?
There was no time reserved for your rebuttal. Okay. Okay. ORS Section 19, first of all, I want to thank you all, because I know this is not easy to do, and you're taking your time to be here. So I want you to know we appreciate you coming and providing your input. ORS Section 197.763, paragraph 6A, states that upon request, the commission must either grant a continuance for no less than 7 days or hold the record open for no less than 7 days to permit any participant an opportunity to provide additional testimony, argument, or evidence. Does any person who participated desire to request a continuance to provide additional testimony, argument, or evidence, or request that the record be left open to submit additional written testimony, argument, or evidence? there's a group.
I heard at least one request.
I'm seeing,
Imagine the applicant may want to rebut some of the things that they've heard since they didn't reserve
Yeah.
any time. You also had the matter of the video that was submitted, which I'm less concerned with because as it was described, it didn't really seem to concern this application, but still, I would recommend, and this is what I usually recommend, the statute says you have to do one or the other, grant a continuance of the hearing or leave the record open for no less than 7 days. I would recommend you leave the record open until Wednesday, the 27th at noon. Is that the right date?
is that, how many days is that?
I think that's 8.
Oh, November 27th.
November, yeah. And that would satisfy the statute. I wrote it down and I get some misplaced in that. And then if you leave the record open, any party may submit additional testimony, argument, or evidence. So it would be leave the record open to November 27th at noon. Any party could submit additional written argument or evidence regarding this application, and then you would continue deliberations to the 3rd. The only other question is, does the applicant wish to submit final written argument? Because the record would close on the 27th, and then the applicant has to be given 7 days to submit final written argument if they wish to do that. So you can ask them if they want to submit final written argument.
After the 27th.
Yeah, so you could, because it's already 9 o'clock, I don't think we should go less than Wednesday at noon.
Yeah.
That doesn't really give you 7 full days for the applicant. If they want to submit final written argument, we could.
Get it up to the 2nd?
Well, it says no less than 7 days, so unless they agree to less than 7 days for final written argument, I'd say you'd have to continue it to the 2nd meeting in December, and I don't even know what that meeting would be.
That's December 17th.
17th.
Okay. So final written argument would be due by noon on the 4th, and then deliberations would occur on the 17th. Unless the applicant wished to waive written argument, in which case we could deliberate on the 3rd.
Just a moment, Rebecca. If they waive written argument, they can still submit additional information.
Yeah,
correct?
let's start at the beginning. Okay,
Yeah.
First, don't recommend a continuance. That means more of this, a hearing.
Right. Just
Recommend that you
the record
close
stays open.
the hearing
Yes,
and leave the record open until noon on the 27th.
right.
Then anyone can submit additional evidence in writing to the planning department between now and then about, obviously, how this application for warming shelter use, not the existing use that's there, how this application meets or does not meet the criterion in the code. Then, at that point, the record would close at noon on the 27th.
Mhm.
Under the law, the applicant has the right to submit final written argument, not new evidence. So after everybody, including the applicant, has to the 27th, the law says the applicant can argue about the evidence that's in the record in writing and has 7 days to do that if they wish. They can waive that. If they waive that, then you could deliberate on December 3rd and make a decision on December 3rd. If they don't waive it, then we'd have to give them until noon on the 4th, and you could not deliberate then before
Till the
the 17th. So that's a question for the applicant. But first question is, do you wish to leave the record open or continue the hearing? I'd recommend you ask for a motion to close the hearing and leave the record open until noon on the 27th.
Yes.
I move to close the public hearing for CUP 2019-03.
I second it.
And leave the record open.
Well, that's the next one.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So I have a motion and a second on the floor to leave the record, to close the public hearing. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Now, Lenny, if you'd like to make a motion.
This
Thought
would
those
be-
are all one. I move that we leave the record open until November the 27th at noon.
Second.
All right, there's a motion and a second to leave the record open until November 27th at noon. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Thank you. Rebecca, I'm just going to let you ask what question you have. This is out of order, but you've been patient.
Proper procedure for adding more testimony, whether it could come by email, if it has to be handwritten, hand-delivered.
It just needs to be delivered to the planning department. It can be by email, it can be in person, it can be by mail. I wouldn't recommend that. And most of our mail goes to Portland for some reason, and it comes back weeks later. So I recommend email or just coming in and delivering it to the
Dropping it
planning
off.
department.
Okay. Now, the next question is, Jeff, do you waive your right to submit
Final written argument.
final written arguments, which would push the decision, or would push the deliberation of the planning commission to the 17th, the December 17th?
And the other option would be, do you want to submit final written argument but not have a full 7 days to do so, which would be, you could submit it on the 29th, I guess. You wouldn't get full 7 days, but you could still do it.
Mr. Apicello, the 28th and the 29th are holidays. The packet will have to be published on November 27th by the end of the day.
I understand, but if we gave them a deadline to submit it electronically, we can hand it out during the meeting. I wouldn't want to shorten it too much.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I would need to have my final argument in by the 27th
At noon.
at noon as well, to have an answer by the 3rd.
Yes.
Correct.
No, December 3rd is the next planning commission meeting.
And I guess my recommendation would be just, you can have, I would offer as much time as they need right up to the meeting on the 3rd to submit final written argument. You could sit here and read final written argument that was submitted.
Yeah, I mean, I would be fine giving them
Up to
until
the
the
meeting.
2nd, noon on the 2nd, and then we could get it and read it on the 3rd prior to the meeting. So would that work for you?
Okay. So final written argument would have to be submitted by the applicant by noon on the 2nd
December 2nd.
of December. And again, the statute defines argument as not including new evidence. So only talk about the evidence that's in the record. And then, so that would be a separate motion to
Yes.
provide the applicant till noon on the 2nd?
Okay, can I have a motion?
I move to provide the applicant until noon on December 2nd to
Submit final written
submit
argument.
final written argument.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
And the last matter would be, you would need to continue deliberations to December 3rd at 6 o'clock?
Yes,
Or that's when you would deliberate?
we need a motion for that.
I would set deliberations for December 3rd
Okay.
at 6 o'clock.
I move.
In a motion?
I would.
Okay, go, Marie.
Make a motion to have the deliberations continue till the 6
Could
PM
you
on the
guys,
2nd.
quiet, please, just let us finish the meeting here. If you want to talk, you can head outside. Thank
6
you.
PM on the evening of the 2nd.
3rd.
Oh, I thought it was the 2nd.
The 3rd.
Third.
Sorry, the 3rd.
Second the motion.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. In favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No.
Okay.
Okay.
So there's one additional thing I'd want to say, is that this is an open planning commission matter, okay?
Yes.
You are subject to, remember at the beginning of the meeting, you disclosed ex parte communications?
Yes,
What we
sir.
don't want to do is start the meeting on December 3rd with, I now have to report 167 ex parte communications that people came up to me and started giving me information. Don't talk to the decision makers. If you want to.
If you see us at Safeway,
If you want to provide information to these people, please submit it in writing by noon on the 27th to the planning department.
Please.
Give them your argument and evidence by that time. Don't approach them at the Safeway. And
Yes.
please, run the other direction if they do.
We will, we will.
I can't run anymore, I'm too old.
Pepper? They will be part of the agenda packet for the meeting of the 3rd.
That was,
It came in after the agenda was published, the packet was published. We have a deadline for publishing the packet, and any of the emails that came in after that were forwarded to the Planning Commission for their consideration. Your email was one of those.
So the agenda packet for the December 3rd meeting will be published by 5 o'clock on November 27th. If you do not have your information to planning by November
Noon
27th
on
at
the
noon,
27th.
it will not be included in the packet.
and of course, you're free to come in and take a look at what's been submitted on Monday, the 2nd, to see what the applicant submitted in terms of final written argument. You can, obviously, those are things you can come in and take a look at, and we'll publish, or at least put on the website anything we can, so that it makes it easy. But after this, the 27th, you're not, please don't give them any additional information.
And anyone is free
Ask
to
you a
come.
question, Richard? Will you review the final argument before we see it?
Yes, I will make sure that there's no new evidence in the final written argument.
Okay, great. Anne Marie, did you have something else?
I was just going to remind everyone that anyone can come to the planning department and review the file in its entirety at any time. Yes.
Very likely.
Very, very likely December 3rd.
Very, very likely. Yes, ma'am.
Right.
That is correct.
Correct.
That is correct. Okay. If you guys, yes, sir?
These kind of things probably need to be addressed to the planning department, not the planning commission. Planning commission doesn't have a role in that kind of enforcement issue. So see the planning department.
I encourage anyone to
Sure.
come by tomorrow.
Yeah.
Anytime. We're open 8 to 5, Monday through Friday. And feel free to come on in, send me an email, give me a phone call.
Or bother her at Safeway.
Yes. Yes. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
They should be aware that everything that we have, except what came today, is on the Lincoln City's website.
Yeah.
So you can look at and print, if you want, anything that's been said.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The
Not here tonight.
published packet.
It's
There were items that came in after it was
Yeah, after the
published.
publication.
Okay. Okay. Is there any old business?
No.
New business?
No.
No. Planning Commission training?
Not tonight.
Not tonight. Any reports or comments?
I have none.
I know what our future agenda item is, and I assume that we're going to see the mobile food unit come back on our agenda.
Yes. As a matter of fact, it's scheduled for public hearing on December 17th.
Okay, excellent. All
So
right.
it will be a public hearing on December 17th.
We're adjourned. Thank you very much. I have such a headache. I have such a headache. I'm hungry, I'm cranky.
I will definitely do it.
He probably has. I wanted to
free
throw
to
this
come on
at
by.
several people. I had to constrain myself.
You're more than welcome, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, they are, I know. It's all right. We're a fluid group here. No worries. Thank you for coming. Thank you, Rebecca. Prophecy is messy.
Boy, that's understated.